potatoes. Hey, sweet potatoes. Baked potatoes.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Captain Logan Show. 'Tis I, Captain Logan. And look, as always, it's my wonderful chat moderator and producer, DJ Martinez. Greetings, DJ.
Hey, guys. How's it going?
What's going on, man? Hey, DJ, do you like mashed potatoes?
I prefer just like a slice, like a cut up red potatoes with some seasoning on them. But, you know, why? Why ask?
That sounds good. Yeah. Why ask why?
I just had red potatoes for dinner. My wife made some lovely red potatoes.
As I always say, you say potato, and I pronounce it correctly. And we've also got this evening special guest, my good buddy Alexi Vanderberg. Welcome, Alexi. Thanks for being here with me, man.
James, thanks for having me. How you guys doing today?
We're great. Perplexed and befuddled after the Jamie Foxx thing that we just found out about a couple hours ago. So we're going to talk about that first tonight. I thought we were just going to launch right into a publishing discussion, but then this happened, and we have to talk about this.
Well, yeah, I mean, of course, because it's either 2020 is now just trolling us, which is entirely possible that, 2020 is like, oh, by the way, let's just give him Jamie Foxx back as, as the geeky Max Dillon,
Let's just have April Fool's year.
Yeah, pretty much.
Obviously, I don't want to get into this because I'm not into politics and stuff, but after you said that, the first thing I thought of was it's like Disney and MCU trying to come up with a way to blow our minds even more than that debate from the other day. Like, shouldn't be possible. I don't think it did. I don't think it's weirder than that, but valiant effort. Nice try there.
Effort. Yeah, it's almost, it's kind of like, well, okay, Sharknado. Are we going full Sharknado? It's entirely possible that
are we jumping the Sharknado?
We are jumping the Sharknado.
I think we should coin that expression. I think that means something entirely different than jump the shark, and I think we should start using it. I really like that. So Alexi is a publicist for lots of genre book writers, and we're going to talk publishing tonight. We're going to talk a little bit about whether or not people even read anymore, why books are still a business, if anyone is buying books, and maybe Alexi will give you guys some cool recommendations for things that you want to be reading. But before that happens, I want to thank everybody very much for being here, as always. Thanks for watching this live right now if you're doing that. Thanks for watching it after the fact if you're doing that instead. As always, if you want to make absolutely certain that your question or comment gets read on air, you can leave a super chat in any dollar amount, and that helps us a great deal here on the channel. We are like 85 to 90% funded now by the audience, and I will make sure and give you a little bit of time with your question for helping us out with that. If you don't want to do that, obviously, thanks for being here. That is the most important thing, is just that you care what we have to say. I don't know why that is, but you do, and that's so cool of you. Maybe you don't. Maybe you just dropped in for a second and went, these people are dumb, and then you left. But for everyone else, thanks for being here. And so you guys just leave regular comments, and we'll get to as many pre-written things as we can as well. There's going to be a little bit less Q&A tonight as there usually is, because we've got a couple of front-loaded things. But after we start the publishing discussion, if you guys want to engage us on that topic specifically, we can do that for a while, or if anything else in pop culture, it's an Ask Me Anything show once we get past those first couple of topics. So let's get right into the Jamie Foxx thing. We just found this out earlier today from the Hollywood Reporter. This is very strange and it looks real because it's the Hollywood Reporter and some other, those sorts of places that usually when it comes there, it tends to be actual news. But Alexi doesn't think that this is actually really happening. Oh, good job, Hollywood Reporter. Shocking news. Brilliant.
Shocking news. Ba-dum-bum. Wow. That's almost Deadpool level of joke there. I'll put it this way.
I like it.
They were very careful with what they said, and that's how you kind of have to sometimes look at these things, because they're in talks with Jamie Foxx to come back as Electro. That doesn't necessarily mean that, it is a done deal. It doesn't necessarily mean that this is what they're going to do. It means that they are discussing it with them. And I don't buy it. I'm sorry. I think that both Sony, Disney, and Marvel Studios all would really prefer the Amazing Spider-Man to stay lost in the zeitgeist of pop culture memory. I saw that movie and was like, what did I just watch? And why? Why do you want to hurt me? I'm not into that. It's,
not into it.
I'm not into it. I'm honest.
He stinks, and I don't like him.
He flipped the sign red. He's not feeling it.
No, I was definitely not feeling the Amazing Spider-Man 2. I mean, the Amazing Spider-Man, I was confused by, but I was like, all right, there's some stuff we can work with here.
Yeah.
I don't know why the Lizard is now trying to conquer the world. This is deeply confusing to me, and okay, maybe it's because I've read Spider-Man for a very long time. I'm not going to date myself, but I am going to say that very simply that this is, wow, Lizard was really not the guy who was like, I'm going to conquer the world with the lizard people. Not usually. I mean, I think there's one or two weird stories like that, but not usually. I mean, the Lizard's usually like, oh, hi, I'm Micro Hulk,
Yep. So just going back to what you were talking about the actual story at the beginning of this. So I realized that it's not a done deal, but the report was final talks, which suggests that they're at least serious about it. Like, I don't think this is a lie. I don't think it's made up. I think they are, for whatever reason, trying to get him to do that. The big thing that you got to wonder is if it's that version, or if it's, for whatever reason, just that actor reprising the role as a completely different version. They could have it in their heads that for some reason, because they had a big A-list actor playing that role, that's who they want this time. And I'm hearing a lot of fans saying that, where it's like, well, maybe they just thought that Jamie Foxx was like the best choice for that role, to which I respond to, there isn't a definitive Electro. Like, you can do anything you want to with that character. You can keep reinventing that every time. And so, and obviously people are going back to the recasting with Jameson, where like there is already precedent for this, but that's a different situation potentially, because unless that sets a precedent where they keep doing this. But that's a different situation where a lot of people feel like there's still not anybody better for that role, and it was a cameo thing, and they knew that they were making fans happy with doing that. Nobody liked his Electro. It's not a thing anybody wants. I wouldn't think. And so the idea that this great actor played this role, we've got to get him back. I don't understand that. Real quick, I got to throw this in there too. There's also a lot of people jumping the gun saying maybe this means multiverse. Maybe they're doing the exact same thing that DC is doing, where they're going to try to bring back Garfield also, and they're going to bring back Maguire also, and they're trying to, and because of, and I feel the way DJ's face is right now, this idea that
we already have Into the Spider-Verse,
because Spider-Verse was popular and won an Oscar, we've got to do that same thing in live action, and also they might be like, if that's true, I think that's jumping the gun. I don't think we can assume that yet, but if that were the case, that would also be them like trying to ride the coattails of the DC announcements, where it's like, well, they're doing Tim Burton and all of that stuff, and so Tim Burton Batman and all of that stuff, so Spider-Man's got to do it also. I hope it's not that. I'm sick of that novelty. I'm going to immediately assume there's not a story there and hope I'm wrong. So yeah, I don't know. If this is happening, I'll be surprised if it's multiverse.
Now, if I may,
yeah,
the one way that I actually would like this to happen is they do a cold open, just kind of like they did in Far From Home, where all of a sudden, Spider-Man, this guy's like, and Spider-Man comes in, essentially kicks him, webs him up, and today in Midtown News, Spider-Man beat up a guy calling himself Electro, and it's like, or Electro, And
yeah, they make it a joke where like we all know that was crappy, and the final talks are, we want you to just show up so we can make fun of you for 5 minutes.
Oh, I hope for his sake.
To be fair, considering I don't think Jamie Foxx has changed his agent. So I mean, his agent signed him up for the first one. I don't think that his agent would be like, oh yeah, no, it's okay not to humiliate Jamie Foxx because we did it in the second movie anyway. I mean, look at the haircut, for the love of God.
Yeah. It's nothing surprises me anymore. Like I keep saying, like when this news came out, I was like, okay, it's as counterintuitive as everything else I've been hearing lately. Like of course, like I'm not with you, Alexi. This is definitely real. It might fall through, but they're definitely courting him to come back.
It's weird enough that they're even talking to him about it. Is like even if it doesn't end up happening, like why? What kind of weird choice?
Like I said, I mean, I would suggest that what they did is that they're like, and today Spider-Man beat up, a guy called Electro,
right?
And him going like, my name's not Electro, it's Electric Man, or something like that.
Don't you think it's more likely that this being Spider-Man 3, that Sony is trying to make up for what happened last time and really getting their Sinister Six together finally? Which I want to make a euphemism, by the way, for getting your stuff together, getting your Sinister Six together. It's
getting the six together. Yeah.
It's like they're finally trying to do that. I don't know. Like maybe that's why it's Electro. It's so sticky with like where does Sony start? Where does the MCU begin? And if it does ultimately end up being a multiversal thing, maybe the whole Morbius and Venom thing is actually in a separate universe and not an MCU, and that will end up explaining Vulture. I don't know.
Well, I mean, this is my question. Is really Hollywood as a business is always 100% behind making money for the least amount of investment. They don't take risks willy-nilly.
Yeah.
Not really. And this seems to be a pretty big risk, considering that, Hollywood has just gone, 10 rounds with Tyson, and Tyson, and it's not been pretty. This is not something that I would expect them to do. This doesn't seem like a safe choice to,
especially
do it. Like,
because you're taking a villain from the movie that was the reason you rebooted in the first place.
Exactly.
It's very strange.
Also a character that was universally derided in that movie.
Yeah.
And I'm sorry, it's one of those things that you would look at and go, let's see if we can rehabilitate him. They're not going to do that. I mean, J.K. Simmons, in and of himself, was universally beloved as J. Jonah Jameson.
And I also don't agree with people that think that they're going to run with that and give him a big role in 3. I don't believe that. I think that was a cameo. I think he could get another cameo.
Yes, and I think that what they're going to do is they're going to keep him as the kind of Alex Jones character.
Well, yeah.
Off screen, who is constantly going, Spider-Man, also known as Peter Parker, and just kind of having that as a continuous impetus for whatever is going on. I mean, and you also already have 3 members of the 6 in universe at this point.
Yeah.
Because we have the Scorpion.
And we haven't been killing people.
No, we have not. Well, we have the Scorpion, we have the Vulture, and we also have Mysterio.
Could still be alive.
Shocker.
He's in Shocker. Yeah, Mysterio's apparently dead, but he may not be dead. It's very easy to bring that character back if you really wanted to.
I don't think he was dead at all. I think them doing what they did kind of pointed out that no, Mysterio's kind of still alive. With that entire thing where the end teaser credit thing, I think they got that pretty established that Mysterio is, alive and kicking. You also have the Tinkerer still out there.
Yeah, so it's easy to make your 6 at this point. I don't know. Yeah. We'll see where this goes. It's very strange. DJ, are you seeing any follow-ups in the comments with this particular story before we move on?
No, people talking about Simmons a little bit.
Blue Dragon 5, J.K. Simmons has confirmed he's coming back. I didn't know that, so maybe a recurring cameo for sure. But again, I'm with you on recurring cameo. I'm not going to assume that he's going to be a big part of that. If they didn't do that twist, to something you said a minute ago, Alexi, at the end of the last movie, or if it turns out that that's not real somehow, they wipe it away in the first 5 minutes, which I think is entirely likely, or at least plausible. It would be really funny if you did have Jameson in, like actually in the movie, and Peter Parker had to work for Alex Jones. I think that could be really funny. Like if he was running coffee at the radio station. I mean, that could be really funny.
I agree.
Nobody is on board for this. I haven't seen anyone. Is anyone happy about this? I want to hear from the person that's happy about this.
Now,
I think the only person happy about this is Jamie Foxx.
But I don't know why he necessarily should be, because it could just be another nail in the coffin of bad choices that he's made in his career. Like he's made a lot of good choices too, but he's one of the most hit and miss actors when it comes to choosing projects. Man, he picks bad projects a lot, and unfortunately that turned out to be one. Now that's not at all his fault. Yeah. That first movie was okay. There's every reason for him to think that might turn out okay. But why after that would you go back for seconds? Like that's like touching the electric fence after you know it's electrified. Like I don't understand that.
But also his acting direction in that, I'm not entirely sure if the character's take was his own or he was told to do that.
Yeah.
But the entire pre-Electro Max Dillon, oh my God, I was like, excuse me, Batman Returns. They want Batman Return.
You want your Electro back.
Yeah, Batman Forever called. They want their supervillain back.
Well, and I was gonna say it's like and everybody was comparing him to the Riddler, and fair enough. But I was imagining Schumacher being on set. Like when he directed Batman Robin, and where notoriously before a scene he would go, "Everyone remember, it's a cartoon."
But only in the villain scenes in that movie.
Yeah, exactly. They just had Schumacher from '97 direct those parts.
I don't understand the logic of it.
No,
I don't understand. And honestly, this feels like it might actually be, again, a Sony Marvel power play thing. Sony going, oh, okay, you don't want to play with us? Fine. We're bringing back Electro, guys.
Well, do you think, and Sony's announced so many counterintuitive things, some of which happened, like Morbius, and we'll see what that's like, but I mean, that was a weird choice, and some things that didn't, but they were trying to do, and that we have that confirmed, like when they were going to make an Aunt May movie, and some of the, and Silver Sable, some of the, that whole black and silver thing, or whatever that was, they've made a lot of really weird choices, so this is not as left field for Sony as you might think, and it tells you how much power they have over Spider-Man, over MCU right now, because it's very strange. Having said all of that, is it possible that they're not, again, wanting to do that version of it at all, and that they're going to let Jamie Foxx actually give some kind of a performance? But then I still understand that, because at the very least, it's going to be confusing to people. I don't know why you would want to confuse people.
Maybe they just think that no one will remember Amazing Spider-Man 2, and they're like, yeah, we can just use it again.
But obviously they're announcing it as look, this thing you've seen before.
Well, they didn't announce it. They got picked up by the news.
They got picked up. That's not unfair, but they had to know. And this doesn't also scream.
That's what I'm saying. They had to have known that people were going to know about it, and very often that stuff gets intentionally leaked or whatever.
Yes, but that's also why I think that this is a Sony thing. Disney doesn't play the game like this. They never do. Disney is always when they announce something, it's being announced. It's planned ahead of time. They know what they're going to do. They're ready to run with it, and they know their messaging.
Boy, that's such a good point, because Warner's is doing this kind of thing too. We found out about Michael Keaton before he had signed on, and now we know for sure, it seems like that he's signed on. That's definitely happening, I think.
Well, and companies like Sony and Warner do this sometimes, I think, to pressure the...
Oh, absolutely.
To get the audience on their side to pressure the actor into actually doing it.
Well, Alexi and I have talked about this a lot. It's what CBS does every time they announce a new Star Trek series that probably won't actually get made. Like it's that the whole thing.
Well, that's Kurt's been trying to keep himself alive. But this is actually even more so than that. I would say that it's not only pressuring actors but also pressuring creators, because I have been on the other side of the aisle where, for instance, two things happen. There are two speeds in Hollywood: incredibly fast and glacially slow. The Frank Herbert estate, for instance, has been trying to make a Dune movie for years. And what happened is that no one would touch it. It was literally kryptonite. Until all of a sudden Denis Villeneuve, who does movies that I absolutely love, but it seems that nobody else does, came out and said, you know what? We just gave you millions of dollars for a movie that we know that only 20 people liked in the 80s. So what do you want to do next? And he goes, Dune. And everyone went, oh, he wants to do Dune. Let's give him Dune. And, that's what happened. That sometimes is just as quickly as Hollywood moves, and other times glacially slow. But they also use this tactic to pressure creators. I've had people who are trying to sell their properties in Hollywood who are writers or creators who have been in process of something, and all of a sudden Hollywood Reporter goes, you know what? This book, this very popular book series is being made into a TV show. And we're like, wait, that hasn't been, we haven't signed that yet. You can't do that.
Yeah.
And that's been with, science fiction properties and fantasy properties and so on, where, the author kind of goes, no, we haven't done that yet. And it is it could be viewed as a pressure tactic. Sometimes it's just that Hollywood, especially these days, is looking for any news, good news, some news. I mean,
that's
look
a
at
really
what
good
just
point
happened.
too. Yeah.
Look at just what happened with WandaVision. I mean, WandaVision, their trailer dropped and it went through the roof because people are just looking for any entertainment.
Yeah.
And they're like, oh wait, there's an MCU thing? What is it? Let me watch it 50 million times.
Because it's new, and because they know it can't get pushed back because movie theaters aren't open. So they know they'll get to see it.
Yes. Which, I mean, I'm still 50-50. I mean, will we actually see, Black Widow at some point? Or is it going to be New Mutants where, yeah, we put it out, bye. I mean, it's an entirely good question.
Yeah, by the time we see that, we could all be vaccinated. I don't know. Like, it could just keep getting pushed back and pushed back. We need to move on to more topics. We're already 20 minutes into the show. So
I'm sorry, guys.
No,
I'm long-winded.
Not at all, man. You and I have that in common, and I think that has something to do with why we're friends. So, DJ, anything else that we need to follow up on from this before I move forward to publishing? I know there's a lot of super chats already, we will definitely get to those. And sorry if we're late on the super chats tonight, but I want to get into the main topic tonight. Yeah. I just wasn't expecting any news today.
Yeah,
because there has been no news. I mean, again. Yeah. How can you announce news for an industry that is effectively shut down?
But all the super chats are directed at Alexi, and some of them are about publishing or books and stuff. So we can kind of weave those in. Once
we'll meander our way into there here in just a second. Alexi, I feel like we've been so all over the place. We need to get our Sinister Six together. That's
fine.
I think we need to do now.
Six together. I promise. I'll be a good boy.
I'm just all right. We got to get our Sinister Six together. I'm going to start saying it.
I'm
going to make it a thing. That's my whole plan.
We're going to make it a thing. We got to do the thing. Okay.
So Alexi, the question I wanted to pose for you in getting this whole thing started, and I'll give you the floor again for a little bit, and getting us rolling on this, is you've been in the publishing world for a long time, and I want you, if you would, to talk a little bit about how publishing is different now from how it was when you started. How true is it that people just really aren't reading anymore, and who's buying books now?
Okay, well, that's a huge. I mean, those are three huge questions.
They are.
Okay, first and foremost, publishing is changing yearly now. It is changing every year, every time, and it is a constant shift. When I got into publishing, Borders had just closed down, actually, and gone out of business. And that was the first seismic shock in the industry, in a industry that is used to lots of seismic shocks. Now, I will say this, that the way that publishing has shifted is that it has gone directly from a industry where the big publishers really controlled the marketplace and the model to a point where now there is a doors blown open. This is essentially what I'm looking at publishing as right now is right at the advent of Napster, frankly, for the music industry. This is where all of a sudden the large distribution networks, the record industry kind of fell apart and collapsed into its own, heaping sack of misery because it did not understand what the model was looking at. And they didn't realize, like, oh wait, we don't control the methods of distribution or what gets seen, or in this case heard, on the shelves anymore. And that's really what's happening with publishing, is Amazon kind of blew open the doors in terms of the retail space, because at this point Amazon is where 90% of people go to buy their books, both physical books and their ebooks. The second thing is that this is where now publishers are struggling to compete against every person out there who wants to put their book out, because Amazon is not in the publishing business, they're in the ecosystem business. They have built almost single-handedly with other groups such as Kobo and with Barnes & Noble, Nook, and so on. They have built what I call ADSI, which is author-directed sales industry, which I like to compare the two industries of New York traditional publishing being fresh produce versus ADSI being canned produce. They're both vegetables, but they're actually, their methods of distribution, their methods of sales, their method of production are entirely different. And ADSI is now actually beginning to overtake that market. New York publishers are struggling to realize that they are not actually in the idea of literature anymore. And this is what they're really fighting with, is particularly within what I call the genre publishing, which is science fiction, fantasy. A lot of this in the old days was called pulp. And what people fail to realize is that the pulp industry was actually a sales industry in and of itself and became its own genre. And has now become such a genre that it takes up about 30% of publishing. If you go into a bookstore, you'll have in retail space about 15 to 20% of your entire retail space devoted to science fiction fantasy, and another 10 devoted to romance, which was the other, bastard stepchild of publishing. Now, ironically,
and is that
those
flipped now? Was it at one time like a lot less than that? When I was a kid, it was more like 5%? I would say
2%.
Wow, like milk.
2%. Yeah, 2%. It was literally, if you wanted to go in and buy a sci-fi book, you usually went to your dime store and you got a sci-fi book, and it was, usually a battered copy that, which what we would now call a book, a secondhand book,
Yeah. So real quick, alluding to, or going back to something you were suggesting earlier, I wanted to ask you if how much of the industry, and particularly with genre, do you feel like is trapped in the past, like you were talking about with New York publishers?
with New York it all depends on who you're talking about. Okay. If you're talking about New York publishers, no one does pretense like literature.
Sure.
No one does pretense like literature. And the thing is that I am not in the book selling business. I am in the entertainment business.
Yeah.
And, that's why I'm like, no, I want to have really entertaining books. Both as my publishing house, both at my bookstore, and as marketing. So that's what I am involved in. There are a lot of people in New York publishing who go, you know what? We're doing books, but we're going to do literature books. And the literature books are really your books that go, they're your books that essentially in the Hollywood industry, they would be your movies that you put out they're Oscar bait.
Yeah.
Okay.
They're trying to make people feel smart by reading them.
Exactly. But then what if a movie industry or a movie studio only put out Oscar bait and that's all they put out?
Yeah.
And this is actually, this is ironic because, Roddy Downey Jr. got, why can't I blank on her name? Pepper Potts, the actress. I can't remember her name.
Whenever anybody does that, I also immediately blank. I'll have it. I'll have it in a second. Yeah.
But but he went to her and he went, "You do all of these. He's like, you get paid really poor money to do all these great movies that nobody watches. Why don't you come and do a movie that is quote unquote beneath you and make a lot of money?" And that's really where we're at. I mean, if we and this is something that publishing has always, especially genre publishing, they have failed to recognize that science fiction, fantasy, and so on, they're so focused on doing what they call great literature, they don't realize that if we brought Shakespeare up to today, he'd be like, wait, guys, time out. You're saying that my plays are the plays that are great literature?
Yeah.
They were,
and same thing with Doyle and Sherlock Holmes.
Exactly. I mean, Shakespeare would say, even more so Shakespeare, it's like, dude, they were poop jokes and come on lines.
Yeah.
And they make them read these.
He'd say, I was the popular literature at the time. I was the MCU of the day, is what Shakespeare would say.
Oh, he was absolutely the MCU of the day. And Sherlock Holmes was the MCU of his time. In fact, it's ironic. Arthur Conan Doyle killed Sherlock Holmes because he wanted to do real writing and then went, oh, wait, I really like the money. He's alive. I'm not telling you how he's alive, but he's alive.
Yeah, and when people were like writing other Sherlock Holmes stories or trying to adapt it or whatever, he would say do whatever you want with it. I don't care. He was fine with fine with killing the character. He was fine with marrying the character off. Famously, he did not care about that. I want to go back to the question I asked you a second ago though, because I'm curious to know if you think that the publishing world right now is a lot like comics, where it's a lot of the same people still buying the books that were buying them 20, 30, 40 years ago, and we're just kind of constantly aiming at the people that are there already and not coming up with innovative ways to get more people interested. Does it have the same problem? Is it exactly the same kind of situation? And I guess that's what I meant when I was asking.
Sorry, my lighting is going.
Yeah, what is going on there? It's do you have a strobe light? You just keep turning on?
No, I guess my camera is just trying to focus, and I'm like, okay. I don't, in fact, ladies and gentlemen, I do not, in fact, live in a disco. Wow, I must have aged myself 10 years with that comment.
You probably wish you did, though. You'd rather live in a disco. But to
answer that question.
Sure. Yeah.
Very simply this. I think that depending on who you talk to, absolutely, that you're selling to your same people. There was a comment that I saw go by, which was the distributorship question with DC, and I'd say that DC is trying to modernize itself, and several publishers are trying to do different models to modernize themselves as well. But really what you're looking at are things like DC and Marvel versus Boom Studios. Or, some of these smaller presses, which are more nimble and are actually direct to market. They're selling directly, not to a distributor, they are selling directly to their consumer. And we're now beginning to see the comic book industry do the same. And yes, that's certainly what's happening within traditional publishing. Now, in order to say, are people reading? There are more people reading today than have ever been reading in the history of publishing since we have actually been watching those metrics. They are not getting their books from traditional retailers.
So it's like the music industry right now. It's like there's plenty of people listening to music, but they're going to YouTube. They're going to just people making stuff in their basement because that's what's interesting. Mutale, one of our viewers left a question earlier just on the post I put up on this, and I wanted to mention it. And this is a good place as any, where he said it seems to him that these days self-publishing seems to be more the way to go, and I'm wondering if you agree with that.
Well, I mean, I'll put it this way. Self-publishing, small press versus New York Times press, I would say small press or is great, and it is a nice model to go with. I will put it this way. Self-publishing you have to be careful with because there are things that authors and creators are awesome at and things that they suck at. For instance, don't try and self-edit your own book. There have been thousands of times where somebody will walk up to me and go, they will, I want to give, I don't want to give a book away, but yeah, here, sir, this is my book. Can you read it? And I will look, 2 pages in and go, this is very nice, but I can't read it because, your layout is off.
You ain't done, sir.
Yeah.
You shouldn't have bound it yet. You ain't done.
Exactly. Young man, apostrophes are there for a reason.
Yeah. Go to the comma store. If I had a dime for every time I told folks in my workshop, and I have great writers in my workshop. I'm not trying to throw anybody under the bus, but one of my favorite things to say is go to the comma store. Because people forget that the punctuation is important.
Yeah. Unless you're J.D. Salinger, punctuation is important, guys, and we need to use it. And if not, I don't know what you're trying to.
But yeah, that's a really good point about editing your own book, and it's difficult because it costs money. You got to find an editor. You got to pay an editor. All those upfront costs are gonna go to you in the first place. But the trade-off is it gives you a lot more control over the work, which is a lot of the reason that I'm not bothering with traditional publishing anymore because my stuff is weird and it's hard to get people to look at it anyway. And so I'd rather be in charge of my own stuff. But it's hard to make it, as professional as it can be if you're not using those avenues. And so yeah.
Well, I remember when you showed me your book and I read it and it's brilliant. And I was kind of like, this is really kind of Slaughterhouse 5 meets Kafka. It's great. However,
thank you for that. I did not mean to turn this into a conversation about my book, but yeah.
No. But I'm saying, when I read it, I said to you, I was like, James, this is amazing. I can't bring this to a traditional publisher.
Yeah.
Because they will, and there are times, the way I got into this was, Rabid Fanboy Marketing was doing, TV and movies. And, Kevin J. Anderson walked up to me one day and went, Mr. Vandenberg, I'm Kevin J. Anderson. I was like, yeah, I know who you are. You're Kevin J. Anderson.
Yeah.
I've read your stuff a lot. And he goes, have you ever thought about doing marketing for publishing? And I was like, well, I wouldn't know where to start because I've never done marketing for publishing. So I don't know what the industry standards are. It's like, well, that's fine. Neither do the publishers. And I was like, well then. And by the way, actually, when he sent me the marketing plan that a big publisher had given him, I was like, is this a joke? And he's like, no. I was like, were they funning you? Seriously. And he's like, no. I was like, okay, because if somebody gave me this marketing plan, I would roll it up and hit them with it. Because this is 15 years out of date.
Stephen Murphy just wrote, "Buy my book," as G. Sherman would say. That's great. Buy my book. Buy my book.
Which I tell authors all the time. I was like, no, don't do that. That makes the baby Jesus cry. Don't make the baby Jesus cry. What has happened is that there are more creative choices.
Yeah.
And really, your point of sale is entirely different. A publisher is investing in you for your book and then recouping off of those sales. You are investing in yourself as a brand and then paying for that to build your sales. It's an entirely different model, which is why I say that they're fresh produce versus canned goods. One is, they both sell vegetables, but they're done in entirely different ways, and your point of sale is entirely different.
And there's pros and cons to both, right? Because I like that analogy a lot, because it's easy to look at one and go, well, obviously fresh vegetables are always better, but one keeps longer, one is cheaper. There's pros to going that way as well, and so it kind of just depends on what situation you're in. I gotta ask you real quick about, because we got to get some comments about something that you asked, that you said a minute ago, when you said that there's more people reading now than ever had before. Or buying books, I guess. Two questions about that. The first one is, why is it then that I'm just constantly getting pushback from people when I'm talking about how important it is to read if you want to write? And there seems to be a lot of people that want to do that job that are not interested in doing what I think is half of the job, which is reading and having a good sense of language. And I think that's part of perfecting the writing craft. And then I hear from people all the time that say, I try to read, I'm just I'm too slow, or I don't enjoy it. It seems like a chore. I hear this so much more now than I used to, and I realize that some of that is anecdotal, but it doesn't seem to be if I went out and took a poll right now just down the street, which I wouldn't do at the moment because of the virus, but if I did that, I feel like those numbers would not likely line up with what you're saying. So I'm wondering why that's the case, if that's the case. And the other thing is, how many people, I'm not talking about buying ebooks, how many people, when we talk about genre stuff, especially licensed stuff, buy books just to have them on a shelf? How many people buy them and never read them?
Oh, I mean, plenty of people, again. Nobody does pretense like literature, okay, and that goes down to the audience as well. However, there are two things. There are a lot more people who recognize that they're reading than they realize they are. People are now getting, just like people are getting their entertainment in different ways, and people are getting their news in different ways. They're now actually reading in different ways too, and I will put it this way. There are plenty of people who are purchasing books on eCopy. eCopy is a huge thing. Audible is a huge thing. Whether you argue that Audible is reading or not is entirely a different question, but I would actually call it literature. You're listening to a story, and you're rather than your voice, your eyes essentially translating these little dots and putting a story in your head, you're listening to somebody tell you a story. It's still very much literature. That's where literature began, back with Beowulf. Beowulf for 1,000, 2,000 years was essentially, was verbal poetry. And then somebody went, you know what, we should write this down so we remember it.
The art is literature, but it being literature doesn't make the act of consuming it reading. Right? Those are different things to some degree. If you're lumping in audiobooks as part of why more people are reading now than ever had, I'm gonna cry foul on that.
No, I am not actually.
Okay.
Because I find it hysterical, because one of the things about New York publishing is that it also creates its own doomsdays in its own head. No, if nobody does pretense like literature, then also no one does panic like literature either.
Sure.
Because what happens is that they have been screaming oh my God, books on tape are going to destroy the industry. Ah! And then, oh my God, books on CD. Books on CD, they're going to destroy the industry. Ah! Oh my God. Audible's going to destroy the industry. Ah! What is funny is that if you look at the marketplace, that is only 15 to 20% of the marketplace of literature within all three of those that I've mentioned. They eat each other. They don't actually eat into physical book sales or ebook sales, which is the physical act of reading. Now,
well, isn't a lot of the problem these days just so much? I mean, I think we've been dancing around this. This is the elephant in the room. They're just like with everything else right now, and we talk about this all the time with streaming TV on this show. There's just too much vying for everybody's attention. So like you're gonna be the pie slices are so tiny right now.
But
it just makes it really hard for anybody to make a living at it.
Thank you.
Even if everyone were reading, even if everybody was reading. Now, I don't think that's the case, because I think that we live in a society where stories are legitimized by being live action and on the big screen, and so there's that.
There's also a feedback loop there, to be fair.
Okay.
Because you know what? Andrew Weir wrote The Martian, which sold very well.
Right.
Right? Very, very well. Bestseller. Then all of a sudden, they made a movie called The Martian.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, that did very well. Guess what happened to book sales? Everyone bought the book. Everyone bought the book once or twice or a third time because they liked the idea of the movie, and that actually introduces more people to the book.
And that happens with Harry Potter and stuff too, but I think those examples are real few and far between. Like that
I actually think that they're more advanced than you think they are. And I also think that what is happening is that people are reading books, but they're reading books in different areas than retail. They're not going to Barnes and Noble or
that's right.
Or Books A Million. Actually, I'll put it this way. If you look at the industry, industry numbers will make you cry. Industry numbers will make you cry in terms of a person who has walked into a bookstore. Less than 80% of Americans have walked into a bookstore in the last year. And those that have, overwhelmingly college educated, white, and over the age of 45.
Yeah, but that's not surprising to me at all, because a lot of people live in places that hardly have bookstores anymore. Like, I don't know, I'm just not sure where you're getting that. I don't talk to a lot of people that say that say they even read anymore.
But if you look at the sales numbers, if you look at the sales numbers, and money talks, everything else walks.
Sure.
You're having independent authors who are pulling down 100, 200, 300K incomes a year, and then some who are pulling down 100, 200, 300K incomes a month.
Yeah.
And so what it is that there is a large dichotomy, just like actually with your actors. There's a large dichotomy. Yes, there are there are actors who are millionaires, and then there are actors who just serve me my salad. And they both exist in the same microcosm, or macrocosm, excuse me. Now, what happens is that more people are reading. They're just not reading the material that is actually being recorded by, for instance, the New York Times bestseller list, or even.
Yeah, and again, it's like music in that way, and I'm sure of certain demographics that is the case. I don't know if that's true of younger people. I don't know if there's people graduating high school right now that are actively reading for enjoyment.
I think there are.
How much of that is even happening? If there are, I'm not running into them. The notion of reading for fun is foreign to most people of that age that I tend to talk to. And again, it might just be anecdotal, but I'm just wondering where you're getting that, because I'm not finding those people.
I am, actually. And the thing is that you
also... Well, and you would be more in the place to do that, of course.
Well, yes. And I'm also the person who is finding them, sometimes some person who goes, you know what? I don't read, I had one kid who walked up to me. It's like, I don't read books without pictures in them, Grandpa. And I was like, okay, that's fair. I was like, what do you like to read? He's like, well, I like, things like the Hulk. I like things. I was like, oh, you like the Hulk? Well, do you know Peter David? Yeah, I know Peter David. I read his stuff all the time. He wrote he's over there at my table. And by the way, he writes prose books too. And, what happens is they go, really? And then they go, well, what's this one about? Sometimes they're like, you know what? I don't like reading too much. I really just like, I like horror. It's like, oh, you like horror? What if I gave you The Artful Dodger as a vampire hunter in London?
Yeah, sure. I'm just skeptical of how many people that would initially get excited about that actually take the book home and read it. Like, I don't think sales always translate to people are actually actively doing it, because so much of people's entertainment these days is more passive. And a lot of people seem to not want to sit down and read a book because it's a more active experience. It's not paced the way films are paced. And I don't know.
I would disagree with. Actually, I think that, the Aristotelian 3-act structure exists both in film and in books.
No structure. But what I mean is, it takes 2 hours to watch a film, and for the average reader, it takes 5 or 6 hours to read a book. And a lot of people have gotten so used to movies being more action driven, where it's not about getting in a character's head, that they don't want to read all the internal monologue. They just go I want to skip all this. And so the pacing feels differently when you read than when you watch a thing.
Well, I actually think that's
not just about structure.
Not necessarily correct, because I think that you have to find the author. There are authors out there who do some of the best action scenes in the industry. Ari Salvatore, Jim Butcher. Those are people who you go to read because they're going to give you an action-packed storyline. And even if
but it's an active experience. You have to do part of the work, and there's a lot of people that are not willing to do that. They weren't raised that way.
And I think that two things. First of all, if they have the book, books don't go bad, unlike movies.
Sure.
And books, actually, the way that I sell books, I'm like, how would you like a 6-hour movie experience inside your head with an unlimited special effects budget? And people go, oh, that's an interesting way of looking at it. See, if you go to them and you say, do you want to read a book? They're going to go like, oh, God, no. Hey, listen, I've got this awesome, for instance, I've got this awesome book right here. It's about a guy who wants to know what happens after the veil of death. And after he breaks through the veil of death, he realizes that he has opened up the entire world to the apocalyptic forces that are now coming to destroy the world.
Yeah, but Alexi,
there's a question
but there's so many people that the medium matters. Like there's a lot of people that would say, okay, yeah, that sounds cool. I'll wait for the movie. Hopefully that comes out. It's exactly the same thing as video games, right? And I think that literature and video games for people these days are really similar in that if you didn't grow up with it, it's difficult to get people to do it. Which sounds weird for those of us that grew up reading. But Alexi, you gotta keep in mind, you're coming at this from a reader. You're a guy that can read a book in like a couple of hours. Like you're a fast reader. You read all the time. And with respect, I think you're coming at this from the perspective of a person who is already a reader. Like there are, and I sympathize with people who have a difficult time with this, because using, again, the video game example, I hear about great stories all the time in video games. That's not a medium in which I want to experience storytelling. If it's brilliant, and people say great things about it, sometimes I'll go ahead and finally try it, but begrudgingly. If I'm going to play a video game, I want to just play a video game. I'd rather watch it. I don't like that video games have to be movies now. And I think a lot of people feel that way about books. Like I'll just like if it was in the medium I liked, and it's like this with comics too. Like if it was in a medium I like, I'd check it out. I have read so many comics that I've told my wife, this is for you. She doesn't care. It doesn't matter how I pitch it to her. She doesn't like that medium. And a lot of people have this with literature.
Yes, and that is a fair assessment. But I would say this, that there are still, when you look at the numbers, more people reading now than they ever have. And they're not just, maybe it is that the people who are reading are purchasing more and have found that medium more comforting to them. And also remember, the fact is that there are now, these things are heavy. When I move, I'm going to actually have a room that is reinforced in order to support the weight of my 7 tons of books. Now, I will put it this way. There are now people who can put it on this damned thing. And what happens is that in that, they can have the entire Library of Congress downloaded to their phone.
Yeah, of course.
And read at leisure.
No, and I don't disagree with you that people are reading in different ways now, and it's becoming more convenient for people who already like to read. But and I'm just asking this question because I might be totally off base. This might be a stupid thing to ask. Somebody just suggested that this turned into a debate, which is totally cool. I didn't think that would happen, but
nor did I actually.
Yeah, like I was coming at this from a different angle than I realized you would be, which is totally cool. And you're in the industry, so you're going to know better than I am. But I was a little bit blindsided by that because I'm not sure if numbers of book sales translate to number of people who are reading.
That's entirely
when you say
possible.
More people are reading, like if more books are being published than ever before and people are buying them, there seems to be a chasm there where it's like, okay, that doesn't tell me how many people are reading. It tells me how many books got sold.
And at the end of the day, from my industry standard, I'll put it this way.
Well, that's what matters when you're trying to sell things, of course.
It's immaterial. Now, I mean, if there is somebody who buys, 7,000, 70,000 books, to me that's a good thing. Now, I would say this: if it's all the same person, we would not be seeing the reflections in numbers, especially on Amazon, especially on things like Kobo, especially on things like Ingram. The sales reports will be different. And we're actually seeing that because there are plenty of people out there who have actually looked and gone, oh my God, the New York sales numbers are down. New York publishing is doomed. And then you go, yeah, but they're actually, what has happened is the audience has shifted to other authors who are outside of the industry.
No, I get that, but man, I'd love to see the demographics of ages and stuff, because it seems to me like there has to be something of a discrepancy here, because we also have this massive literacy problem in this country that is worse than it has been in like decades. So, like, explain that to me. Like, how can you say, like, more people are reading now, but also kids aren't being taught to read? I don't get it.
Well, I mean, I would say that they're not being, that they are not being taught to read. I think that they're being taught to read in different ways. And I would actually say that some of the problems are being highlighted better that in the past would have been brushed under the rug. And also, we're beginning to see new modes of learning that are coming out there. It is a fact that there are still people who like to watch, for instance, my mother-in-law loves to watch Channel 2, Channel 4, and Channel 6. That's what she got, and that's what she likes. And when she comes here, she's baffled why we need so many television stations. Now, that being the case, once she sits down and she watches it, she's like, oh, I kind of like this. Oh, I kind of like that they have a Food Network. Who ever thought of that? And what I think you're getting anecdotally is people saying, gee, I don't like to read X. If you give them something that is tailored to what they already like, for instance, I loved this to death. There were 2 older authors that I once had, and they were at a Comic-Con with me. And they're walking by these young kids, and they're going, sir, young man, you'll love this. It scored, it won an award as part of a science fiction magazine. And I was like, stop right there. It's like, what you're doing is you're trying to sell them on the award that you won, which is wonderful. However, they don't know what that award is. I was like, try and tell them about the book. What's the book about? And I had read the book, and it was actually about Knights Templar in a war with secret assassins, right? So I was like, okay, I want anybody who has wearing a hood, anyone who's wearing a hood, I want you to walk up to them and go, assassin, this is a book about the Templars, right? And they sold out. After the first day of them being essentially miserable and wondering why the hell they're there.
Alexi,
now the question is whether or not they read it.
These anecdotes are not telling me about whether or not people are reading. It's telling me that you're a good salesman.
But I will tell you this, that if you
I bought so many books because the premises sounded great that I've not read. I'm a person that I like to think of myself as a reader. I understand the importance of reading. I don't spend nearly enough time doing it. And I'm a person that doesn't need to be convinced, that is a huge advocate for reading, and I don't do enough of it. I read maybe in total 5 or 6 books a year, maybe. And I have like 1 million books on my bookshelves that I've never looked at.
You just answered my question. You just answered 2 points to me that I want to say. 2 things. First of all, they keep the book. I don't care whether they read the book today or they read the book tomorrow or they read the book 20 years from now. I hope that they read the book.
Okay, but this just all started from me wondering if people are reading, not whether they're buying books. You see what I'm saying?
And the thing is that to me,
William Parcell, I totally am a book hoarder. Absolutely, yeah. I'm with books the same way I am with comics. I kind of care to have them more than I care to read them ultimately, and I hate admitting that, but I think it's true. I'm such a collector.
But the second thing is that I'll say this, that the sales numbers for those authors on Amazon 2 weeks after that Comic-Con went actually far higher.
Sure.
In that area. So I am saying that whether or not 100% of the people who bought the book read the book, a significant portion of them did and liked what they saw enough to buy the next book.
Yeah, but a significant portion of them went to a convention and walked up to a booth that sold books and probably were book buyers, like in the first place.
Mm-hmm. There is, I would say that if anybody has ever seen Bard's Tower, they would absolutely know. I got frozen there for a second, I think. Am I frozen?
No, you're okay. You're good now.
You're good.
Oh, okay. I would say that anybody who walks up or has seen the setup for Bard's Tower, which is literally a 30-foot tall tower in the middle of a convention center.
Yeah, it's cool. Yep.
The fact is that whether or not they recognize it as a bookstore or not is entirely beside the point. They come to it and then they go, oh, gee, this is it. I mean, I'll put it this way. How amazing was Firefly, for instance? Who saw it? At the end of the day, I mean, we all saw it afterwards, but at the time, who saw it? The question is in this, whether, how they got there is immaterial.
Yes, but that's convincing people to watch an off-the-beaten-path thing they might not have watched before. It's not convincing people to watch television.
I think that I would disagree with, because I will say this very, very, very simply. Let's say you're not a science fiction fan, but all of a sudden you watch Firefly and you absolutely adore Firefly. And you go, you know what? This was pretty good. Let me see what else is out there. It might not convince them to watch television, but it might introduce them to science fiction.
Yeah, no, but that's the point I'm making, is that you don't have to convince people to watch television. Nearly everybody watches television. That's the point I'm making. Is that like books used to be ubiquitous with consuming fictional literature. In the world I live in, it's not anymore, and it seems like maybe we live in different worlds.
But that's the diversity of. That's the diversity of entertainment, and it is also the diversity of entertainment that's affecting comic books at the same time. It's also the diversity of entertainment that is now affecting network television when we're now all going to streaming.
But real quick before we get to before we finally get to some questions, because we
went way far more afield than I expected it to. My apologies.
That's okay. Well, I didn't want to cut you off because it was interesting, but there was a point I wanted to make earlier that I've got to get out because I think it's important and it feels like another elephant, which is you mentioned probably 20 minutes ago now the idea of people seeing a movie that we made a big deal out of in commercially. This was a book first, and they go seek out the book. I would suggest that, and like I said, I think those examples are kind of few and far between, but the really popular ones, the Martians, the Harry Potters, the Twilights, those, I've talked to so many people that were obsessed with that particular thing, but it didn't get them into literature. They read Harry Potter, but they didn't. It wasn't the gateway drug that it would have been. And also, this happens in comics some too. We know that there's not a correlation between the popularity of a film and the popularity of comics. People don't see movies and then go buy comics, with certain exceptions like Watchmen. That did happen. In 2009 when Watchmen came out, those trades sold like crazy, and a lot of people that bought them read that book, and that was an exception for them. They liked the material so much that they would begrudgingly go through it in a medium they didn't care about. Did not get them to read more comics, and I think that happens more often with books than you're suggesting.
And this is actually interesting because I'll say that movie studios, the reason that they're going to things like comics, books, TV shows is that, like you said before, there's such a large drain on our attention that anything that has a built-in audience is a marketing plus for that TV show or movie or property in another medium. This is why we actually, they tried to bring back Blake Edwards' Pink Panther, for the love of God, because, well, it has a built-in audience. Because there's a lot more of a demand on our time than there has been in the past. I'll put it this way. If, a movie or TV show has to almost immediately make back its money per viewership within, I think, a week to 3 weeks of its release. If not, the drop-off is so significant that it will not make its money back. However, if you look back to, let's just go back to 1970, let's go back to Star Wars, okay? How many movies were released in front and behind Star Wars?
I just don't know what point you're making. So,
my point is this, is that at the time there were 2 movies that were released in front of Star Wars within 3 weeks. Only 2 movies. Only 2 weeks after, 2 additional movies were released. Then they also had 3 channels of television.
Yeah, cable, no, I get that. There wasn't a lot vying for their attention, now, so that movie did well. It might get buried now.
So the point is that their time to earn their money back was actually much greater.
Yeah,
it gave Star Wars the chance to actually breathe, to actually become the mega hit that it became. However, I would point out that with properties like, like Harry Potter already had a built-in audience, and that's why the movie studio chose it, is because it wanted that built-in audience.
No, of course, but the books weren't finished when the movies came out, so there were a lot of people that got into the books because they wanted to know what happened next, and a lot of them did it because that was the only way they could find out that story, so they begrudgingly read a book. And a lot of those people didn't keep reading books, they just read those books.
And that's entirely possible. And then I'll put it this way, 10, 15, 20 years later, they might just still be reading those books.
Yeah.
Or 10, 15, 20 years later, they pick up something else that's written by the same author.
Yeah, sure.
I mean, I'll put it this way. When J.K. Rowling, granted now probably a bad example, when J.K. Rowling, was outed as essentially writing mysteries under a pen name, those books got eaten up very quickly. Same thing that happened when there were people who discovered that, Stephen King wrote the Four Seasons book, including the Shawshank Redemption.
Yeah.
There is
you have those exceptions for really popular things. Well, anyway, we really need to move on.
I am.
And like, it'd be nice to cap this off in some way, but we've got to get to some questions, make sure we don't go over 2 hours if we can help it. DJ, I'm sorry for leaving you out so long, man. I didn't mean to do that.
It's all right. Like I said, I got a couple super chats specifically about this topic, so we can jump right into those.
Sweet, let's do it.
Well, the first one, I don't know. Yeah, the first one's peripherally related. Massive EMP that takes out all technology. This is from T-Edge1. And AI that take over the world are among the most common sci-fi apocalyptic stories. Which is easier to write, and which do you prefer to read? You guys are awesome.
Yeah, thanks, Tom.
Okay.
That's a cool question. Go ahead.
Wow. What do I prefer to read? Post-apocalyptic AI, or post-apocalyptic EMP? I think it all goes down to the presentation.
Yeah.
There are. It is sometimes overblown that there are no original stories in the world. I don't quite agree with that, but there's a lot to be said about the packaging and presentation. If there, I have read great, regressive. I'll put it this way: the difference between the Hunger Games and Thundar are not actually particularly that far off. It's the presentation and what you do with it. One ends up being a brutal slog, for a Romanesque circus for the entertainment of the masses, and the other one ends up being, Oogla smash.
But just for your personal sensibilities, Alexi, like, just right away, what tickles your fancy more? Like, if you read like a log line for a thing, you had no idea what the quality of it was gonna be. Do you tend to go more toward one or the other? Because I'd say
I like the idea of AI.
Because for me, it's AI, and I've read the evil AI story or the benevolent AI story both like a bazillion times, but like when it's done well, I'm still not sick of it. I still feel like there's plenty to say with that. And the EMP thing is a great deal more limited. The EMP thing also feels a lot more timely, where it's like right now that's a concern, and like obviously the AI thing is a concern in various ways, but still a little more abstract. I think it's more interesting because it's more abstract.
The post-apocalyptic sometimes the post-apocalyptic EMP story does not even involve an EMP. Stephen Sterling does an amazing series called The Emberverse, which is essentially one day everything above fire stops working and no one knows why. And it's actually an unresolved plot point because the people just don't know what happened. They're like, maybe it's alien space bats. We don't know. All we know is that cars and radios and heating and everything, and gunpowder has stopped working and we don't know why. Which is an interesting way of presenting, again, a story like that. I find AIs way more interesting.
Yeah.
Because my question with the AI is always, is it benevolent? Is it not benevolent? Is it something that you can look at and go, that an AI, it might be so alien that you just don't have any idea what's benevolent and what isn't in it. And the AI, the scary aspect of that is maybe the AI doesn't know itself.
Yeah, for me, it's like it boils down to what elemental kind of storytelling do you more prefer, right? Because almost inherently, the EMP story ends up being a man versus nature story, whereas the AI story is a man versus himself or a man versus man question. The AI thing is what makes a man, what does it mean to be alive, and the EMP thing is we don't get to have technology no more. So what happens now, right? So it's almost like naturally a man versus nature story, like taking us back to like prehistory after we had technology, and so like that's more of like when you get finished with that story, that's when it gets interesting. I guess the point I'm making is very often the EMP is a break in status quo before it's the story, right? And the AI is the story. I think maybe that's why immediately that appeals to me a little bit more.
And that's always the post-apocalyptic scenario, no matter what it is okay, we're going to break up the normal human life, and essentially take away our creature comforts, whether it's a pandemic, whether it's a meteor strike, whether it's just technology stops working or EMP or whatever. It does regress down to essentially man versus nature, and to a certain extent, man versus man itself, because you're going to have barbarians who just go, "Yay, we have no technology, let's eat people."
Yeah.
And then AI also, you forgot one, which is man versus God.
Well, yeah, sure. That's the fourth one.
The question is man God? Does the AI look at man as God? Does man killed God? Does the AI then kill man?
Yeah. Sure.
And those are questions that also come down to, I think, in the medium of books. If you're gonna say that the medium is specialized, I would say that this is something where it's going to excel in, because you can do, unlike television, unlike movies, doing an inhuman thought process in a book is way easier than doing an inhuman process or inhuman thinking process, or I don't know. I used to call it orange and blue morality. Excuse me. Where, your moral compass does not equate to good or evil anymore, because it just doesn't equate like that.
Yeah, of course.
H.P. Lovecraft was well known for that, where, his gods were not really evil per se. They were just so alien they might as well be.
DJ, let's get another question, man.
Yeah, the next one goes along with that. William Parcell. Alexi, I hate the direction a lot of the famous sci-fi series, Star Wars, Star Trek, Terminator, etc. So do you have any book recommendations to fill the void?
Absolutely. If you're looking for good sci-fi, I mean, you mentioned Star Trek and Star Wars, right? Did they?
Yes.
Okay.
As examples
I can't see the questions. So, if it is good Star Trek and Star Wars, if you're looking for great space opera, I would recommend a couple of series. One is Imperials by Melinda Snodgrass, which is essentially young woman is essentially going to inherit and become the queen of the human empire, and her relationship with essentially a poor-born tailor who's in the same military service as she is. And it's essentially a come from behind, what defines you. And it's just great space opera. Also, Honor Harrington, which is done by David Weber, is also amazing space opera. Essentially, what if Janeway was not completely crazy and was actually a good military soldier, and you put her into this Napoleonic kind of society with spaceships. A third one that I would highly recommend if you were really looking for, if you're looking for space opera alone, the Expanse series is absolutely amazing. If you're looking for something, more apocalyptic, you mentioned the Terminator, I believe, then I would actually look at something like The Partials by Dan Wells. I would also look at something, The Partials by Dan Wells. I would also look at 1,000 Pieces of You by Claudia Gray. You might also want to try some of the other Star Wars stuff that is just, I'll put it this way. Some of the now non-canon Star Wars books were absolutely amazing. The X-Wing series by Aaron Alston and Michael Stackpole were spectacular. That's really where I kind of go, yeah, that's That's where I get my Rogue One, fix from, and so on and so forth. You might also want to try something like Red Shirts by John Scalzi. All good books. But for post-apocalyptic partials, 1,000 Pieces of You. I would also try the 1632 series, which is kind of alternate history, but apocalyptic alternate history. I would, it's essentially, that one's about a West Virginian town that gets suddenly transported back to 1632 England, and how they don't have a lot of technology, but they also have a lot of know-how, like how a steam engine works. So they're still technologically really advanced. They're now just put into medieval England, and how, what can they pull off, what can't they pull off, and so on. I would also go with another good series if you're looking for like a Terminator. There is a book called Angel by Todd McCaffrey, who is the son of Anne McCaffrey, who did Dragon Riders of Pern, which is absolutely amazing. And that's probably the best AI story I've read in a very long time. Then I would also look at something, if you're looking really post-apocalyptic, you can go to things such as, the Emberverse would be also another one that I would highly recommend. Sorry, I went far afield on that one.
No, there's a big list, so
that's cool.
All right,
go do some research, check it out. No, I was going to ask you to do some recommendations earlier, so I'm glad we got a good list in there. Alexi's got to come in here and prove how much he knows about literature. No, he doesn't. It's very clear how much you know about literature. Quick plug, we're going to have Melinda Snodgrass here on the show this month, by the way. Or I think we are.
Yes, we are.
She is, because Alexi, I haven't talked to you about that since we talked about it, but I was pretty sure we had that booked and solid.
Yeah, no, we had that all set out, I thought.
Yeah, I'm just making sure. Well, because I haven't talked to her, but I talked to you, and so I'm just making sure that nothing changed, I guess is what I'm saying. But anyway, Melinda Snodgrass is not just if you don't know her, is not just a book author, but has also worked a lot in television, and she wrote Measure of a Man for Star Trek: The Next Generation, which is a beloved episode and a lot of people's favorite episode, and she was the story editor on that show for a couple seasons. She left in third. Was it for 3? Was she there at the beginning? Because I thought she came in like during.
No, she was not there at the beginning. That was that was Dorothy Fontana.
No, I know Dorothy Fontana was there, but I didn't think she was even on staff until like 2. Was it middle of 1?
Second season.
Okay.
No, second season. At the beginning of the second season, she was on there, and I think she lasted. I think her last episode was in season 5.
Okay. See, I thought she left well before that, but I could be wrong.
I might be wrong. I mean, I'm going off my memory, but
I'm going off our interview from a couple of years ago, so I don't know if I'm right about that.
It's entirely possible.
But anyway, she and I talked for 45 minutes. We talked about a lot of different things. So anyway, we're going to do a follow-up with Melinda Snodgrass. She's going to be here on the live show, so you guys will be able to ask her questions about anything you want to regarding the industry and Star Trek and anything. And we're going to talk a little bit, unfortunately, about Picard and the ways in which they weren't quite fair to her on that show. So we'll talk about that. I don't want to get into that here, and you guys will just have to come and see what I'm talking about with that. But anyway, so that'll be in a couple weeks, so look forward to that. DJ, let's get some more questions out, man.
All right, John Ty, Alexi, what was your reaction to DC having their own distributor for their comics?
Yeah. Good question.
Well, I think that Diamond, I mean, we could take up an entire discussion on Diamond and the weird distribution model that has essentially destroyed, competition within just the distributorships for.
Yeah, we kind of did. I did a show majoritively about that after that happened.
But I would say this. I don't have a problem with DC doing that. In fact, I think it's good. My concern is twofold. One of which is that their discussion with AT&T that they're going to go to a direct sales distributorship model, which then destroys the entire comic book shop industry. which is, in my opinion, a cause for concern because I have a lot of friends in the comic book industry and so on.
Of course I do too.
The person who would really be able to answer that question completely would actually be an author that I represent, John Jackson Miller, who is both a prose author and he is a comic book author, and is way smarter on that topic than I am. But I'll put it this way: competition is good. As a business person, I do not want them to completely destroy an industry such as the small business owners who own these comic book shops. That's a concern.
Well, and
but
the
if they're
thing
willing
to
to actually build.
The thing to keep in mind, because I didn't know this until I talked to my shop owner, William at Elite Comics, this didn't create any more competition. It just split the market because you don't have an option of who to get DC Comics from. All it did was split the market and change the store's discounts, so they don't get the discount they got before because they can't buy in as much bulk from one place anymore. So like, yes, of course it would be great if we had real competition where you could go to Diamond or somebody else for all your comics, or even if there were several different ones for lots of different places. But all you have right now is Diamond that represents everybody, and this other place, I forget the name of it, that just has DC. And if you want DC, you have to go to that. So that's not helping anybody. And that's already getting us closer to the end of comic shops, even before they go to direct market. So it's not a good thing. It should have been a good thing. No. It's not a good thing.
It should have been, but it is not. And you're absolutely correct on that. I hope that answers your question.
Yeah.
Moving right along.
So this one came in right as we were closing the last discussion. So it's about Spider-Man. J. Forever King. I feel like Raimi's Doctor Strange 2 will explain why Electro is in the MCU, especially with rumors of Maguire playing Spider-Man again.
So once again, we don't want to. I don't think we should jump the gun and assume either direction whether this is a multiversal thing. There's no reason to assume that it's not just the same actor reprising the role, but it being a completely different role. So if that isn't what's happening, if it is multiversal, then yes, obviously it's going to be related to the movie that has multiverse in the title. But like, I don't think we can assume that's what it is yet. It very well could be, because the multiversal thing is people are getting kind of obsessed with, and it's becoming this novelty that's kind of, I'm concerned, taking the place of real storytelling. It's turning into this big giant gimmick, and I don't like it. And this is coming from a person that really likes the multiverse notion. But now it's like, okay, and I don't even think this is true, but what it feels like is we've run out of ideas based on all these comic characters. So now what we're gonna do is blow your minds by mixing like all of these previously existing properties that we never thought we'd see again. And like, yeah, that was cool the first couple times. Like, admittedly, when as terrible as they are now, when the CW shows first started doing that kind of thing, when they brought in 90s Flash, like, that's cool. Like good on you. But it's not enough. It's certainly not enough anymore. So yeah, it very well could be related to that. You might absolutely be right. But we got a J. Jonah Jameson that was played by the same actor and didn't come from a universe we'd seen before. So we can't assume that that's what we're doing. And if we don't, like, that would make so much more. I still think it's a weird choice, but like, nobody liked that character. It makes so much more sense if they just brought Jamie Foxx back and said, yeah, you'll get to actually play somebody that is maybe likable this time, or at least not a cartoon character.
Cool. The next one I don't really fully understand. TH1 says, all in one block with no spaces, so I'm going to try my best to read this.
Okay, go to the comma store, Todd.
Go to the space store. I love when you edit my super chats is all together, and then he says, awesome show, guys. I think he's just making fun of the fact that I have to correct his super chats before I say them out loud to you guys in my head. I don't know, but thanks, Tom. Josh.
Okay, well, Tom, like I appreciate the super chats, and I don't want to make fun of a person that's helping keep me in business, but I do have to say, buddy, you could proof them before you post them.
Before you hit send.
No, I like that, because that's a Harry Dresden troll right there.
You're gonna make fun of DJ for making his job harder, like.
Speaking of which, we have to do. Jim and I have talked about Babylon 5, and us doing Babylon 5. So whenever you are up for that, we're good.
Yeah, I have not been mentioning that just in case it never ended up happening, but this is gonna be another one. No, that's fine. This is gonna be another one of those stop announcing things moment. Stop announcing things. No,
it's usually me.
No, but now that you've said it, I feel like we got to really make sure that it happens at some point. Yeah, I'm so stoked for this idea. I don't know that more than 15 people are going to care about this, guys, but Alexi got me to finally watch the majority of the rest of Babylon 5. I've still not finished it. I haven't watched the last season yet. But Eric and I, years ago, were doing a show called Deep Space Babylon 59, which we were having a lot of fun with, but it was too much of a commitment to finish, and there wasn't enough interest in it. And Alexi represents Jim Butcher, who writes the Dresden Files series and is a really popular author, and he's a huge Babylon 5 fan, and agreed like a year ago when we pitched this to come on the channel and do it'll probably be live shows. We'll basically do spoiler casts on each season, and so I was binging through it. And then I got a kidney stone, and then I got cancer, and it just crazy things happened. And so we will get to it. I'm gonna have to go back and rewatch each season before we do it, of course, too. But the idea of having Jim on the channel and to talk about Babylon 5 is so freaking cool. So I'm hoping that it happens.
Honestly, it's something that we've talked about. Man's been super busy recently because he's just released like 2 books.
Yeah, exactly.
But so he's right now in the middle of like, leave me alone. But we will get to that point at some point, because we had talked about that
like a year
and I had
ago.
just brought it back up to him like not that long ago for a review, a review binge of Babylon 5. Because
did he still sound intrigued by that?
Absolutely, because Babylon 5 is his go-to for storytelling. He loves Babylon 5, and so did I. I mean, Babylon 5 is one of those things that we watch and we're like, yeah, this is awesome, because really, they were talking about proofreading at the time. See, I saw that chat.
Thanks, Tom, for clarifying.
The Babylon 5 was one of those things that we sat down, we talked, and we're like, what's really amazing is that you think it's you think it's a science fiction show until you realize, like, wait a minute, this is kind of Lord of the Rings in space, and it's amazing. But
a really good modern political thriller all at the same time. Like it's crazy how dense that material is. And I have gone on record and said this before, but I'll say it again. Man, I love being a turtle. No, it is better than Deep Space Nine. Like it really is. And that almost hurts my feelings that it managed that. But it is. It's so much more sophisticated than anything Star Trek.
I was a lurker. I was a lurker well before I was a DS9er. I'm sorry.
Sure. Fair enough. Okay, let's move on, folks.
Sorry.
No, not at all. We're an hour and a half in, and we got a whole bunch more super chats, and we should probably tackle a couple of pre-written things so that people don't come at me with torches. Go ahead, DJ.
So Josh Galisano, you already referenced this one, but he just said during that whole discussion, this is a debate between 2 intellectual titans.
Oh, thanks, man. I don't agree with that at all, but I really appreciate that.
I are a dog. No,
I didn't expect that to turn debatey, Alexi, but like you and I are such good friends and have such respect for each other that I feel like you and I can go anywhere and get heated and we'll still be friends at the end. It might be cool at some point to intentionally do a debate. Like I don't know what the topic would be. Like if we found the right topic, like you would be the first person I would want to do like a geeky debate with. I think it'd be really fun.
I would love that. And I'll put it this way. Well, first of all, I wear my big boy pants, so it's all good. And
we don't
second,
on the show,
it's just so nice. It's just so nice to talk to somebody that with a thing like that knows how to debate and understands that that's what we're doing.
Yeah, no. I mean, and that's not an issue at all. And I enjoy stuff like that. I tell my assistant all the time. I was like, challenge me.
Yeah.
And she's like, why? I was like, because there are a lot of people who go, Alexi knows what he's talking about, so just let him talk. And I was like, no, I need somebody to kind of, my wife does it to me. You know what she'll do? She'll say, Alexi, take out the trash. That'll just, shrink your head right there. Just take out the trash.
being challenged is, for anybody, is like sauerkraut. It's good for you. Okay, go ahead, DJ.
Yeah.
Next is from TH1. I think you're both right. Schools are teaching kids how to read, but not how to think critically about what they are reading.
That's
not an unfair assessment.
I also don't agree that they're always teaching them how to read in the most efficient way they could be. But I don't want to get into my issues with the public school system right now. But there's a lot of counterintuitive stuff going on. There's a lot of we don't like phonics anymore. Why? It works. I don't understand that. The sight reading thing, it's nonsense. But that's all I'll say about that.
This is from GJJIJJI. Hey, would you guys ever do a live show where one of us can guest star on it?
DJ and I have talked for a long time about figuring out a way to turn this into a call-in show, as dangerous as that might be, and that's probably the
we
closest.
Can always hang up.
That's probably
dangerously. Do it.
That's true, but it would force DJ to play hardball in a way he's never had to before, and we would have to figure out a way. We'd almost need another person. We'd have to like screen calls and stuff, I think. So probably. So I don't know. That's about the closest to that I would want to go. And as far as like, you know, how I bring people on the show, it's just a matter of like you know, getting to know people in different avenues and clicking with them, and they're just making sense to be, you know, to be here. So like, I'm not going to like, and I know this probably isn't the answer you want, but I'm not going to just like blindly bring on a person that I've never seen, you know, speak before, and that I have no rapport with for an entire, you know, hour or 2 hour show. If we did the call-in thing, I might bring it in for 5 minutes, but it's not going to make sense to just go, okay, you watch the show, so you get to be on here. And I don't think really anybody would do that. It just doesn't make sense. So that's not to say that you wouldn't necessarily be great. I don't know you, but obviously not everybody is going to be right for, you know, the format or for you know, a rapport with me and DJ. I'm not cliquish. Like, I don't care about sub counts. I've had all kinds of people on that don't have YouTube channels, or that have YouTube channels that aren't going anywhere, that should, because they're great. So it's not a popularity contest. But you know, the rapport's got to be right. Go ahead, DJ.
All right, 5590 ERS wants to know: have you guys seen classic Doctor Who?
Absolutely.
A little bit.
Happily.
Yeah, I like the what is it? What's the stuff that Douglas worked on? It wasn't Pirate Planet. What was it? I can't remember. Douglas Adams.
Douglas Adams worked on several. I mean, he did a lot with the dialects, I think.
Did he?
I think so. But he also did. That's gonna bother
Key to
me.
Time, maybe. Is what I'm thinking of.
I think he was the Key of Time. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's the classic Who that I've seen that I really liked, but I have a hard time with that film quality. I can't go back to it. I have a really hard time with it.
Really?
Yeah.
Now, see, I'll put it this way. You know, long before the BBC, there was PBS, and they had it on at like God 30. What the hell are you doing up at this hour? And what I would do is that's how I actually started watching Doctor Who, and I actually came in at Robot, which was the first of the fourth Doctor stories, which is it's the famous, you know, it's Tom Baker. And so I didn't know what I was watching at first, and I was like 14, and I'm like, what the hell is this? And there's a little robot, the robot on the green screen, and then they also have like, you know, little like toy trains that are being eaten by the robot, and you're like, what am I watching? This is awesome. And then what happens is that I watched like 4 or 5 episodes because actually my gaming group had actually flaked out that night. So I was essentially just watching for you know, I was watching like 3 or 4 episodes. I was like, okay, this is kind of cool. And then I watched, like, the next Friday, I watched, you know, 10 more episodes, and I'm like, oh, there are different doctors. And this is before the internet was a thing, so you couldn't like research this stuff. So, you know, you had to go and you know, by
and pros and
Dr.
cons to everything, though, right? Don't you miss when there was mystery in the world? And don't you miss when you could latch onto a thing that you loved, that you thought was all your own, and then you discovered that there was a fandom for it, like happened with a lot of people with TOS?
Oh, yeah.
Like, that never happens anymore.
Guardians of Galaxy.
It's almost impossible for that to happen. You don't discover things. Nobody discovers anything anymore.
Well, and I find this hysterical because, like...
Maybe in books.
You know, it's... you know, there's a film reviewer who says that essentially the idea of Buckaroo Banzai was that kind of pulp feel where you don't know what the hell they're talking about.
That's exactly right, yeah.
But what they're doing is that they're, you know, it's like, we'll have the Green Goblin or regulars, and you're like, the what? What the hell is going on?
And what's cool is that did turn into one of those cult classic things where a lot of people don't know about that. Like, they did it on purpose, and it totally worked that way. It's crazy. Buckaroo Banzai is fascinating.
Oh, it is. It is fascinating.
I didn't know what that even was until Eric made me watch it for a video. Like I'd never heard of that, and I was like, this is really interesting. They tried to bring it back a couple times, but...
Yeah, no, they've had it. Actually, Kevin Smith has wanted to do Buckaroo Banzai versus the World Crime League forever. And then the other thing is that I would say that...
Sorry. I'm reading DJ's comments. They're very funny. Sorry, man.
Doctor Who is one of those things that it's funny because when it came back, my wife came home one day and she said to me, she's like, okay, what is Doctor Who? And I was like, that's a long conversation. and she's like, well, what do you mean? I was like, well, like, Doctor Who's been around for, at that point, like 45 years, hon. And she's like, really? I was like, yeah. I was like, why are you asking about Doctor Who now of all time? She's like, because my kids were, she's a teacher. She's like, because my kids were talking about Doctor Who and what their favorite Doctor was. And I was like, well, what's their favorite Doctor? They're like, the second Doctor. I was like, so they went back that far? And she goes, yeah, like a year. I was like, no, honey, no, that's Patrick Troughton, who is dead. You know, and she's like, he died? I was like, yes, because it was done in 1965.
Yeah. Like, they were talking about Tenet, but Doctor Who was so obscure here for so long that when they made Bill and Ted, they went for a phone booth because they thought it was like an obscure, crazy, weird thing. It didn't even occur to them that it had been done before. It's crazy. They weren't ripping off Doctor Who; they just didn't even know about it.
Well, and that's the funny thing is that Doctor Who was at one point the gold standard for your geek cred.
Yeah,
like. I like I've seen all the Star Wars.
But see, now everything goes mainstream. Like, if it had a big enough following somewhere, it will get mainstream, and then it will get watered down, and then it will suck. Like, that seems to be what happens now.
That is a debate that
hopefully not with everything, but it's been happening with a lot of things lately. It's unfortunate.
Well, that's a debate we can have for another day, my friend.
Is that a debate, though? You can't argue there's not some things that's happened with. I don't mean blanket statement like everything. But
no. I mean, there are plenty of things where I watch things now and I'm like, what? Why? Why did you do this?
I don't have a dog in the Doctor Who fight because I'm not watching that anymore, so I don't know where that's gone. I mean, I know there's a lot of people unhappy with it. I don't want to get into that. I'm just saying, like, if you're talking about arguing about that, that's not what I'm talking about. I was talking
more about Star Trek, where, like, watching Discovery, I'm like, what? Why? I explain this to me.
But you and I both agree that that's terrible.
It's terrible.
So where's the debate? I don't understand.
No. I'm just saying that there are plenty of other things that haven't gone that way.
Well, no, absolutely, sure, but not enough of them because it happened to both Star Trek and Star Wars, and for a lot of people, Doctor Who. And there are other things. Okay, there's other things, and it's unfortunate. There are other things, and it happened to Ghostbusters, but that might get fixed. I don't know what Afterlife's going to be like. Whatever. Go ahead, DJ.
All right, 5590ERS. Last super chat that I have currently.
Okay, cool.
At this moment, Alexi, are you a fan of Green Lantern comics?
No, I am a fan of F. Sharp Bell comics. Did you guys get that? F sharp L. Oh,
okay, I do now. But yeah, good one. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Okay. For those of you who don't know, there was a comic in which they gave a Green Lantern ring to a species that has hyper intense hearing, but has no sight. So it's like, the guy lands and he goes, "Greetings, we're going to, we are part of the Untranslatable Corps. We're here to give you, and a ring that is untranslatable, that is going to help you fight injustice." And the guy's like, "Oh, okay." And it goes from there. If guys read the story, it's amazing. It was a lot of fun. But no, I'm a huge Green Lantern fan.
Yeah, I feel like we've had conversations about Green Lantern because you had like a whole movie pitch, which we won't get into. But you've got you've got Green, or am I thinking of Fantastic Four? Maybe you also had a Green Lantern thing. I know you had an FF pitch at one point.
I have had pitches on several things because remember, I also write the article, "What if we could make it great?"
Right. So you've got which is somewhat similar to the show that Eric used to do. You guys, you should check out that blog. It's really cool.
I will.
Wait, no, I'm saying blog. They should check out your blog. That's what I'm saying.
Check out your own blog, Alexis.
Read your blog. It's good.
No, but because I gave you the Voyager pitch, I believe.
Yep. Yeah, we talked about that at length. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And we've talked about doing something about that. Okay, so we got another one from John Ty there. I'll go ahead and read this one. $5 super chat. Alexi, have you read House of X? House of 10 Powers, or House of X Powers of 10, and Earth 1 Green Lantern? And if you have, what are your thoughts on them?
Okay, House of X Powers of 10, I think, is the best use of the X-Men in probably 15 years.
It's so freaking good.
I would say that I love the aspect of the post-human. I mean, it's post-humanism. It's all post-humanism, and I love it as post-humanism. I also love the fact that we're getting, you get that vibe of the X-Men being kind of creepy and cultish, and I kind of like it like that because I've said that, I use I do a panel at shows often called, everything I learned in life I learned from supervillains. And somebody will inevitably bring up Magneto or Xavier versus Magneto, and I was like, Xavier's kind of creepy. I mean, he's a guy who has unfettered access to your mind, messes around with essentially recruits kids, and wait a minute, puts them in his special school.
And I love morally ambiguous Xavier. I talk about this all the time. But here's what's fascinating about Xavier that nobody ever talks about. Okay, I got to bring this up really quick because it's interesting. So Xavier runs a school for mutants, and he teaches you how to control your powers. He's arguably the most, or at least one of the most powerful mutants alive, and somehow he didn't need that training. You can't trust a guy who didn't need someone to teach him how to do that when he's the most powerful mutant. It's really weird, right?
Yes, but also my point on that would be that Xavier, Xavier's entire discussion, I mean, from my perspective, is kind of disturbing. The idea of, we should all be, if you could do art in hyper colors because that is your mutant powers to perceive colors in ways that no one else can. And that's how you're going to do your art. And Xavier comes by and goes, "No, we actually have to bring you down so that you can talk to the masses." That's kind of a disturbing idea.
And what was really impressive,
we're all gonna die.
What was really impressive about one of the really impressive things about what Hickman's doing, and I haven't read past that initial setup. I haven't read the monthlies yet, but was making me buy a more cynical Xavier. Like I totally bought that he got there. Like, and we've never done that. Where you've got an Xavier who always stuck to his guns, and it's that like Captain America Winter Soldier thing where like no matter how hard the world pushes back, he's going to keep his principles. And then finally he kind of throws his hands up in the air and says like I was kind of wrong, like not entirely wrong, but like I was kind of wrong, and we tried
to do it.
Like I got to be a realist about this now. It's not gonna work. I got to save my people. And like I should have hated that, and it really worked.
But you buy it because I mean, he's like, guys, I tried.
Yeah,
I tried nice. I tried good. I tried proactive. I tried regressive, and this never, ever, ever worked. Because not for our lack of trying.
Yeah.
But okay, this is the way you want it, then fine. I am still going to work with you guys, but we're going to do it on my terms rather than yours.
Yeah, he doesn't turn into Magneto. You'd never buy that.
Yeah.
But he ends up being somewhere in between them. I mean, he's a more realistic Xavier. Sort of like when Magneto is a more realistic Magneto when he comes a little bit more close to Xavier, which we have done in the past with Genosha stories and stuff.
Well, I mean, people forget that Xavier actually gave Magneto the headmaster position for the school for like I think 7-8 years in the comic book in printing time, and probably about 2 years in storyline time.
Josh, that's true. Early Xavier was in love with teenage Jean. It was a different time. But then he says it shouldn't be canonical. It's really weird that we still consider it canonical. I personally try to ignore that and have X-Men Season 1 as the canon early days, and that's a good way to go. Season 1's great.
Yeah.
It's one of the only ones of those that I really liked. That was not a good sentence, but it was that's a good book. Was that Dennis Hopeless? I think that was one of the first things Hopeless did. Who's not one of my favorite writers, but I thought that was really good. Pretty sure that's Hopeless because I had him on, and I think that's what we talked about. So yeah. Anyway.
No, but I love post-human superhero stories. In fact, I run, especially now that pandemic world is here. I run actually a RPG, which is post-human superheroes.
Oh, cool! I was going to ask you how that was going because you invited me to that, and I didn't have time to do it. And I'm sorry about that.
Yeah, no, it's going great. Actually, my entire gaming group actually has a whiteboard of crazy with all the plot points.
Is that what your whiteboard was that you didn't want anybody to see? Is that what it was?
No, that's my whiteboard of crazy. They actually one of the players actually bought a whiteboard and wrote down all of the plot points and literally has various arrows going to things, and I'm like, oh my god, you wrote a whiteboard of crazy.
Yeah, but you should do that when you do a really complicated RPG because people try to just keep all that in their heads, and like there should be, RPGs should be, and I haven't done a lot of these, but like so tell me if I'm wrong because I don't know what I'm talking about, but it seems to me that pencil and paper RPGs should be like board meetings. There should be somebody that keeps meeting notes and tells you when the meeting is adjourned. Like there should be a person that does that.
That's the game master. That's my job.
Well, that's true. Yeah, but you also have to make up everything. And I still feel like the game master could have a secretary.
Archon, take the notes. And it's funny because I'll go like, okay, last time, does everybody remember where we are? And they're like, yes, and I'm actually dealing. I actually made a character that's essentially Lex Luthor, except with Magneto's mindset.
Oh, that's interesting because that sounds a little bit like a thing I did in a. I've mentioned this on the channel before, but I don't think you know about it. I did an email role-playing game. I wish that was still a thing. Where we would write back and forth, and we would just contribute the next paragraph with whatever character we were playing as. So everybody played as separate characters, and you would just write what your guy did next. We did a whole reinvented amalgam, the '96 Marvel versus DC thing. And we just invented crossover characters.
Nice.
And one of mine was Professor Lex, who was Professor Xavier and Lex Luthor, and that was a lot. But you just reminded me of that whole thing.
That's nice. I like that, Professor Lex.
He was Professor Lex, and he was of course evil, and he had his minions were the Lex-Men.
Okay, the Lex-Men. That's awesome. I love it. No, because what I have this. He's a his real powers are essentially he's athletic and he's good at it, but really what he is that he's unflappable, and he's essentially a media star. So he'll out debate, and he's the guy who's like, well, I have superpowers. What that means that I should actually do what? Help humanity? No, I'm going to help my people because that's kind of, and they're like, well, what about your obligation to mankind? He's like, just because I have a shovel does not obligate me to dig you a swimming pool.
Yeah, no, that's cool.
It's good stuff.
I just want to Cap real quick. I had to approve Mutale's comment. All he wrote was Logan Man. And
that got blocked. Okay, so Alexa, we've been making fun of all the stuff that YouTube blocks in the comments because their algorithms are so busted up. Where like sometimes there will be a word that it seems like you just can't use, but like 50% of the time it will allow you to use that word, and other times it won't. We had a whole night where we just kept like going through. It was a slow news day, and seeing if YouTube would let us write like everybody in the comments write comments with the word black in them was like YouTube assumes it's a racist comment if you say black in any context, just as a color, like at all. But like 50% of the time it would allow it, and other times it wouldn't, and it was really funny. And
this makes me sad.
Well, yeah, it's also really sad, but you have to have fun with these things, or you're gonna go insane because the world is insane now. Yeah. But that was kind of amusing. Anyway, what else we got, DJ?
Next up, in continuing with Tom's tradition of asking questions that are very pertinent to what we're talking about at the time, but we don't get to them until about 20 minutes later.
Yeah.
TH1 says, read a blog or we're all going to die.
So I used to do a show called Read a Book and We're All Gonna Die, and that's where that came from. And we got that, I got that quote out of a movie that Eric made me watch that was a Halloween thing, and I can't remember. Monster Squad. Monster Squad's where that came from.
Oh, Monster Squad. The Wolfman has nards.
In the first 5 minutes, there's this amazing moment where this guy just screams, "Read, or we're all gonna die!" And it's the best. It's my favorite. It's my favorite quote in anything, though.
You gonna watch that again this October?
Probably not. It was an okay movie, but I love that. I love that part, though.
Just watch that clip every year. That's in your rotation for Halloween. Next one is a $10 super chat from the Wolverine 1987.
Okay, thanks, man, but I hate you for this comment.
Oh, okay. Haven't read it yet. I'm excited now. Cap, since you always confuse Daredevil and Deadpool, if Charlie Cox and Ryan Reynolds switched their respective Marvel roles, which one would do a better job?
Okay, so it's an interesting question, but for the record, I don't confuse the characters. I just very often will accidentally say Deadpool when I meant to say Daredevil, and vice versa. They both have D's in their names, and it's really easy to do that. I've done it, and very often I'll do it and never realize I did it, and then later on I get comments where it's like, yeah, Cap, you talked about Daredevil for 10 minutes, but you were actually meant Deadpool. So yeah, I've never seen Charlie Cox do comedy. I've seen Ryan Reynolds do drama, so I feel like Ryan Reynolds attempting Deadpool is something I can imagine more readily. But I don't know enough about Charlie Cox's range. So that's
maybe he could do classic Deadpool, like just little
classic Deadpool's
sarcastic.
Still jokey though.
Yeah, but it's a different kind of humor.
But it's still humor. I just don't know if Charlie Cox can do that. He's so dry. I just don't know.
Okay.
I bumped into him at a cocktail party once.
Charlie Cox?
Charlie Cox.
Oh, cool.
It was like gathering, and I was just I was doing my own thing, and somebody's talking to me, and I'm going back and forth, and all of a sudden this guy goes, "Pardon," and I turned and I was like, "Oh, dude, you're Charlie Cox, and you have an Irish accent? What?" Like, I didn't know that he was. I had no idea that he was. That he was from the UK. Had no idea.
I didn't know that either. But if I had wherewithal when that happened to me, I would have said. I totally wouldn't have had the wherewithal to say this. I would have said, "Didn't you play Bullseye in that Daredevil movie?" That's what I would have said.
Nope, I'm out. I'm done.
Because he had Irish accent. Okay, moving right along. Go ahead.
Next up, Maniac Madness 11. Do you believe a writer should prioritize creating a satisfying ending that fans will love, or endings that fit their visions for the narrative?
No, definitely the second thing. Although, well, go ahead, Alexa.
I would say this. If you have readers who are already reading reading your work, what you've already written for your narrative, hook them in the first place. So keep on doing what you're doing. I think that's a false dichotomy. If you are writing something that has an ending, then the fact is that you've had readers, unless it's just fanfic, and even then you'll still have fans. You will still have people who will go to the end and go, yeah, that was a great ending. I think that dichotomy of, oh, I have to make fans be satisfied with the ending. You're never going to satisfy everybody, first of all. That's just not going to happen. There's always going to be somebody, and I said this to an author who had a bad review yesterday, and she was like crushed by it. And she's like, but I was like, stop. First of all, don't read the reviews. Okay? Therein lies the way to madness.
Right. Yeah.
Okay? Just ask Chuck.
Yeah.
The second thing is, for the love of God, don't read the reviews. And third, not everybody's going to like the ending. Even if you write it to make it a satisfying ending for what you have envisioned for your fans, no. Write your narrative, because your narrative is actually what hooked them in the first place.
And people, that's a great answer, and I agree with all of that. Very often, people, believe it or not, if they're thinking people anyway, also have really nuanced opinions about stuff. So if a person is passionate enough about the work and they loved it already, and they don't like the way it ended, that doesn't always mean that they're crying foul on the ending. It's that something happened with the characters that they wished didn't, but that doesn't always mean the narrative was bad, and that doesn't always mean that there's disliking things, and then there's like and then there's like thinking there's a problem with it. You know what I mean? Like there are very often in stories like characters I don't like, but they serve the piece. They need to be there, and the same thing will happen with a lot of endings. Also, if what you wrote in the first place was there 100% for the sake of fan service, then it would be consistent to give it the ending that everybody wants. If what you wrote was really super character driven and people like it because you're simply allowing the characters to move the story and to drive the plot, and the next thing that happens is just naturally what the characters would do. As you're writing it, you're having an out-of-body experience. You're not writing the story is writing you. Then you have to take that to its furthest conclusion, and it doesn't matter what anybody thinks of it.
Nice.
That's what I think.
Perfect.
Okay, go
ahead. John Ty. Oh, continue. I don't know what Tom means by this. TH1. Ryan Reynolds does play Deadpool. You mean pool.
Okay. I don't know what that means. Thanks, Tom. Moving right along.
I'm assuming it's a typo because he's typing on his phone, I guess. John Ty. Alexi.
There's nothing forcing you to hit send or enter before you've looked at it, Tom. You can look at it first.
James, they're giving you money.
No, I know. Tom's in the Discord. He and I talk a lot. I've got a relationship with Tom. Okay, go ahead.
Alexi, have you read Green Lantern Earth 1, and do you have any thoughts on it?
Ooh, that's one of the only ones I've not read. Have you read that?
I have not read Earth 1 yet. Green Lantern Earth 1 yet. I've wanted to, but I have not. In fact,
was that John's?
Somebody actually...
Johns wrote that, yeah?
John Ty. Oh, sorry.
No. Jeff Johns wrote that, yeah?
That's what you're saying.
I believe he did, but I have had now 3 people say, have you read Green Lantern Earth 1? And I'm like, no, I have not. And they're like, you've got to read it. And I was like, okay. And now with the 3rd recommendation, I'm going to have to do that.
Yeah, I'm going to do it too. Because I've liked most of those. And the only ones I've not looked at, I haven't read the Teen Titans one. And I think, did the second Wonder Woman one finally come out? I haven't read that yet, if it did. I think that came out, and I just haven't read it. But I've read the first one. It was fine. I didn't love it. But I love the Batmans, and I think JMS's Superman is the best comic Superman we've had in like 20 years. So
cool. Yeah, John Ty says he really likes that. So I guess that's Lewis Cox. Cap, does the Lexmen have a Dark Claw?
No, because we didn't use any of the amalgamated characters from the original. We made up all new ones. One of the other things we did, again, I mentioned this before, but in case you haven't heard me say this, another thing we did is we combined the Ninja Turtles with the Fantastic Four. So we gave the Ninja Turtles all the Fantastic Four's powers. We did some crazy stuff like that. So it wasn't even all DC. It was DC and Marvel. We brought in some other things too. I don't remember all of them anymore. They were fun. I wish I still had some of those documents, because I was in like 2 Smallville groups for a while too. I played Lex Luthor in 2 Smallville groups, and like one group I was in for a while. In that whole scene, I guess I got known as like the guy that could sort of write Lex Luthor, because people kept coming to me trying to get me to write in their game, which was weird. So I wrote Lex in 2 different games for a while, and that was really fun. Nice. And I wrote Lex and Bruce Wayne at the same time. So I brought in like a young Bruce Wayne that was best friends with Lex Luthor, and that was a ton of fun to write. But yeah.
I was deeply disappointed with Smallville season 2 when I first saw it.
Oh yeah, sure.
Because they had a character in there. I can't remember the character's name, but he was kind of he was hanging around with Lana a lot, and he's like, yeah, I'm from one of the cities. My parents died when I was young. I was like, are they doing young Bruce Wayne? Because that was a thing in early Superboy, in the early Superboy comics, where they had like young Bruce Wayne.
Well, they weren't allowed to. That was a huge fight that they had through the entire 10-year run of that show. They tried to get him in every season, and that show, legendarily, but I think this is true, starts from their pitching a young Batman show instead of a young Superman show. They didn't even want to do Superman. Superman was like sloppy seconds, and they were like, we think it would be cool to do, because nobody's ever really done like the years where Bruce Wayne goes and trains and stuff, and that's true. That was a period that hadn't really been filled in. The problem was Begins was being developed already, or at least the idea of doing like a young Bruce Wayne thing in the movies was already being kicked around, so they were never allowed to do it, because the Nolan movies continued through the entire run of that show, and so they were never allowed to do it. And it's hard to argue with that. Like I think sometimes it's irritating when there's an embargo like that, where it's like you can't do this character in this place when it's in this other place, when it's entirely different. But when both of them are like the same age and it's like Batman training, I can kind of understand why Warner's didn't want to do that twice at the same time. Like that's decent. Well, that's good business. I understand.
Also my question with that is that I would say that Superman's story arc being essentially how to deal with being well above, essentially a superhuman at a young age is a far more compelling story, and there's more places you can go with it than Batman with Bruce Wayne being angry and going, okay, I'm going to train myself up, because Superman has lessons to learn.
I wish Smallville had made that case better, but I don't disagree with that. You should be right about that, yeah.
But, Bruce Wayne has things to do. Superman has things to learn. Yeah. No, that's true. Because he's already a character that kind of refuses to change. Yeah.
Okay, DJ, I think we have maybe a couple more super chats still, and then we're already past 2 hours, so we need to wrap things up here.
All right, we'll get through these last 3 real quick.
Yeah.
TH1, at what point do the fans get to take control of a property? I'm asking because J.K. Rowling was brought up earlier. I love you guys.
I'm gonna let Alexi field this first, because I've answered this before. But go ahead, sir.
I'm gonna step on a landmine on this one.
It's hard not to, yeah. Well, and I'm not trying. Look, I'm not pushing you in front of the bus. If you want me to start, I will. I've done this before. Go ahead.
I'm a big boy. I'm wearing my big boy pants.
You don't need pants. DJ already told you.
Again,
you don't have to have it. We can't see you past a certain point. You don't need pants for this show. Sorry, go ahead.
I would say this. There's certain things that you can say for creator intent, and there's certain things that you can say for audience intent. It could be very easily said that Melville, looks at Moby Dick and goes, guys, it was about a whale. That was it. Now there are other ways that you can look at her properties and say, yes, she has a responsibility to her fans, but as a creative, she has a responsibility to create the narrative that she wants to create. Whether or not people read it or not is the marketplace, and that is responsible for that. Now, in terms of fans looking at her properties and going, gee, I don't like what happened with them, and I want to do my own thing, that's what fanfic is.
Yeah.
You don't have unfortunately, you do not, copyright exists for a reason, and it exists because of, the fact that we protect the creators. But the fact is that if you want to create fanfic, that's awesome. If you even want to say that a property that you are working on is inspired by another property, absolutely. Right now, I'm working on a medieval fantasy based on Rocky, inspired by Rocky, because I thought, what if you actually had a warrior? Every time we have a warrior in a book, he's the young farm boy who has a sword and has to learn his way. What if you have a guy who's essentially, he is a warrior, but life has just kind of passed him by? And I thought about that with the first scene in the first Rocky movie, where, he's fighting, oh God, what's his name? Spider. And he's, the fight looks horrible. And afterwards they're like, well, Rocky, you won, here's $50. And, Spider, here's your $20. And the doctor, and by the way, the rest of the money is going to go to the doctor who's going to patch you both up. You can do something like that. If you want to do your own inspired, kids go to a magic college, J.K. Rowling is not the first person to write that, and she won't be the last.
Sure, but I think what's being asked with that question is more about like how much writers should like let fan outcry or whatever influence them, and B, like whether I forget what the B was, but like there's another thing, I can't remember what it was, but anyway, I think it's more about that,
if it's
right?
That, I would say this: the creative has to balance that out between writing a satisfying story for their audience, because their job is to entertain.
Yeah.
I mean, if you're going to do something, and there are plenty of ways of taking a story in unsuspecting ways that make narrative sense.
The other thing is,
if you have,
the other thing is whether the author should be able to retroactively say that the piece was about certain things that they didn't make it clear in the first place, or just like add things canonically that like if J.K. Rowling comes out later and says this character is homosexual, but in the piece you could read it that way or not read it that way, like does it count as canonical? I would say no. I would say pieces stand on their own, and like an author doesn't get to like tell you what it was about. That's the one part of this that kind of drives me crazy.
And that's the thing is that.
But that's not a matter of the fans. Sorry, that's not a matter of the fans owning it now. That's a matter of the piece is the piece. Like that doesn't have anything to do with the fans. That's the it exists now apart from the creator.
Well, also authorial intent is. But authorial intent is exactly that. Okay, so I'll put it this way: if it's not explicitly stated in the work, then that's going to audience interpretation, which is completely outside the control of the creator. I mean, like I said,
pieces take on a life of their own, and they should. Yeah. That's what's so cool about art. Yeah.
I mean, Melville could come back and say today, dude, it was about a whale. You should have been in the boat with some tartar sauce.
And also, he can have an opinion about his own work, and he can tell you what it is, but he can't tell you you're wrong if you can point to evidence in his own piece backing up your interpretation.
Not even that, but it is also a question of that author or that creator. How that piece speaks to you is yours and yours alone. You can say that, by the way, this, that, for instance, somebody mentioned J.K. Rowling, so we'll go with Dumbledore and I can't remember his name, Grindelwald. Grindelwald being, lovers, because of their close relationship, and they go away together and so on and so forth, and it goes bad. That subtext is certainly there. Now, is it emphatic? No, because the author hasn't said in
sure,
the work.
I didn't read that part, so I didn't know that was there. So like, there's clearly if there's a real interpretation there, sure. But I was just using that as a random example. Well, not a random example. You brought up Rowling, but I'm just saying, like, if with anything, if somebody goes, that person is Catholic, and you're like, there wasn't any religious undertones in this entire thing whatsoever. Like, you can say you intended it to be that character to be Catholic, but if it's, and I feel this way even about like names and stuff. Like, Uhura canonically in Star Trek was not Nyota Uhura until 09. It wasn't the books, but those aren't canonical. Like, and you'll hear a lot of Star Trek fans say, no, she was always no, she wasn't. Her name was never said.
Yeah. I mean, and that's a.
I may have turned this into a different topic on accident.
No, it's fine. And it's a completely valid question, because, we don't have Hikaru Sulu until Undiscovered Country.
Yeah, that's right. DJ, I know it's getting late. We gotta get
log,
the rest of this knocked out.
Excelsior's Captain's log at USS Excelsior, Hikaru Sulu commanding. And I was like, they finally said his name.
Right before he broke his teacup. Okay, DJ, how many more have we got, man? Because a couple more popped. Okay, let's try to knock them out real fast. And if DJ, if you have to get going before I'm able to finish the show, that's totally cool.
Okay. Yeah, I'll let you know. Lewis Cox, imagine if Marvel had TMNT. Oh, no.
Just imagine Stan Lee creating the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Okay,
those
I'm imagining
some wild comics, those.
It's not that hard to imagine. I think if the Turtles were in Marvel, just as far as how characters on the street would react to them if they knew they were there. Weirdly, the Turtles wouldn't have to be as worried about people finding out about them as they are in their own world, because they live in a world where people are more used to weird stuff, but there would be a certain amount of bigotry surrounding them still, because people would just assume they were mutants and born that way. And they are
mutants. They could just go
live
with the Morlocks.
And what's really funny is they are mutants, but they're different kind of mutants. So they're not humans that were born that way. They were like created in a lab. So what's really funny is you actually, in the Marvel universe, you can't call them mutants anymore. They'd have to be the teenage something else turtles, because that means something in the Marvel universe. You can't get hit with ooze and be called mutants.
Well, no, you'd be an altered human, or an altered turtle.
It just doesn't roll. Whatever it is, it doesn't roll off the tongue. Yeah.
I'm gonna actually end up making like some rude word by spelling this out, so I'm not. Anyway, I would actually point out that in that, just like with my Fantastic Four pitch, I would say that people would not only be used to more weird stuff, but it also depends on which version of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles you're looking at. If it's the original Eastman and Lear Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, that makes Daredevil, the Alan Moore Daredevil, hysterical.
Well, that's a good point, because what you end up, well, not Alan Moore, Morrison.
Alan Moore.
Alan Morrison. No, Grant Morrison. But what?
Grant Morrison.
No, not Morrison. What are we even? Miller. But
Miller.
But what gets really funny is see, it doesn't even work, because you end up just like doing a parody of a thing inside your own continuity, which is what Deadpool was, but with other things. But I don't know. Anyway,
Josh Calasano says Teenage Inhuman Ninja Turtles.
Oh, that's a good one.
If Marvel was cool with doing more crossovers, because they've been sticks in the mud about this for a long time, like DC has finally started doing more of lately, it would be nice to do a crossover with something in Marvel with Turtles, just to get a contrast to Batman Ninja Turtles, because we've been doing a lot of that lately, and some of that is pretty good and successful, and the movie is wonderful. So I'd love to see the Turtles crossover with, say, Spider-Man or something. That would be where I would go, right? Or Daredevil. That'd be the other place to go. Whereas Daredevil basically is like looking at walking parodies of himself, and he's like, that could be fun. But yeah. Oh my God, did I do it again? No, I think I meant Deadpool when I said Deadpool. Shut up. I'm not actually telling you to shut up, Blue Dragon 5. That was a joke.
1987. To everyone, if you were transported inside a comic world, would you become a superhero to be important by default or disappear as nameless extra? Yes, read Gwenpool recently. Read Gwenpool recently.
Yeah, Gwenpool's fun until it's not. But yeah, that it's a depends question. No, I'm kidding.
I would say this. Why can't I be a supervillain? Come on. You know?
Because he's assuming you're not evil, Alexi. But considering that your name is Lex, I don't trust that.
I'm just drawn that way. I'll put.
He's just drawn that way.
I'm just drawn that way. No, I would point out that and I wouldn't be a supervillain who wears purple tights and a skull on his chest and robs banks. I'd be okay, let's go into business, guys. Maybe do Heroes for Hire, but except for real.
Sure.
Cool. Oh, we just got another super chat.
Yeah, I don't know necessarily what I would do. I mean, it depends on just how violent the universe is. Do you want a low profile, or do you want to be one of 6,000 other superheroes? Because I wouldn't want to be a generic superhero. I'd only want to be a superhero if people knew my name. If I can be in the top 20, that's cool. But if I'm Rocket Racer, I'll just open a deli or something.
Yeah, it depends on what superpower you have.
What about Demolition Man? Come
on.
Dude,
there's a character named Demolition Man?
Yeah.
Okay, so you know what I would do if I don't know who that is, but you know
he's homeless.
What
he's a homeless superhero.
I don't care what he looks like. If my superhero name is Demolition Man, I'm gonna go. By night I'm Demolition Man. By day I'm managing a freaking Taco Bell, because that's hilarious. Welcome to Taco Bell.
Welcome to Taco Bell. All restaurants are now Taco Bell.
I can't believe there's a character named Demolition Man.
Yeah, no, there's a character named Demolition Man. He's actually in the Avengers. He was part of the.
Is he part of Damage Control? Because that sounds like a character that should be in Damage Control.
Actually, he should be in Damage Control. But no, Demolition Man was when they had the unlimited level wrestling. He was one of those characters who was given superpowers by the power broker, and then he went homeless.
James123, I'm writing this down right now because I think I promised somebody this at one point and it lost it in my notes, because I lost a bunch of notes at one point and people helped me get them back, but this is one I'd forgotten. James123 asked if I'm going to review the Batman Returns first draft script. I'm pretty sure a year ago I said I'd do that, so let me write that down and I'll make sure and get to that in the not too distant future. Okay. I started reading it and it was boring. But I will take a look at that at some point. All right.
I'm gonna have to read Green Lantern Earth 1.
See, you don't want to come on this channel. You just get homework. That's what ends up happening.
I get homework anyway, so it doesn't matter.
Okay.
I had to just research Amelia Earhart for a book that I'm publishing.
So naturally, I'm sure you watched the 37s.
37s.
That really crappy Voyager episode about Amelia Earhart.
Did you watch Night?
I forgot about that one.
You didn't remember the 37s?
How could I forget the 37s? It's the first time they land the thing where I'm like, this is so stupid.
It's so stupid. And it opens with a truck flying around, a pickup truck flying around space, and then it closes with, get this, off-screen city touring. They're on a planet, and they're like, we just came back from this amazing city, and they don't show you any of it. It's the best. Anyway, I'm sorry. We gotta finish up. Go ahead.
John Ty, who is more justified in hating the Marvel heroes? Thunderbolt Ross hating the Hulk, or humans hating X-Men?
I'll venture a guess on this one. It depends on your point of view.
Yeah.
From Thunderbolt Ross's point of view, the Hulk is an existential threat to the military.
Yeah.
And is essentially military property that has gone awry. So essentially, it's like losing it's like somebody dropped a nuclear bomb and you're trying to get it back. The X-Men present an existential threat to humanity. as essentially power politics go. So I would say that they are both equal, but it depends on the point of view.
And it depends on who's on the team right then. Like, I could see a character hating a specific mutant in the X-Men that would be on par with Ross hating the Hulk, but just as a group, unless you can make an argument for whatever they just recently did is kind of like terrorism, then it just reads bigoted, and Ross isn't straight up bigoted. I mean, it's kind of different.
I'll put it this way: the X-Men, like '90s X-Men, I'm like, no wonder they hate you. Look at your team. I mean, like you guys do not have any sort of management. You have a guy who pretty much has knives for hands. You have a guy who
and you're a dysfunctional family with no real leader.
You have a gun that's larger than the guy that's holding it. You have another guy with a gun that's larger than he's holding it, and then you have Magneto as your leader. What? Like, of course they're going to go like, oh no.
But you can make a real case for that team being domestic terrorists without getting into we're all racist territory. Yeah. No, that's an interesting question.
Lewis Cox drops in a couple. Could there be a new Star Wars pod racer game?
I mean, I'd love that. They made a remake, or not a remake, but a remaster of the original that I've not looked at yet, but need to. I think that's come out. But that's one of the great late '90s racers. I love it. It's the best port was on Dreamcast. There's one on 64, but the Dreamcast one looks a little bit better. Like everything on Dreamcast. The sequel is not good. It's very strange. I would not recommend that. But the first game is amazing. I would love a follow up to that. That's more in the same league as that first game, and it really holds up. It's pretty. It's a lot of fun. It's a great game.
Very cool.
It's like the best thing that came out of Episode 1. Like, you'll play that game, and it is not great as Episode 1 is. You'll go, well, thank God for pod racing, because this is really cool.
Well, actually, I think that's what my problem with the pod racing episode in Episode 1 is that it's a video game that I can't play.
Yeah, precisely. Well, you actually can play it, so go play it. It's great.
There you go.
And I think they've, like I said, they remastered that recently, so you don't need a Dreamcast to play it now. You can play it on PS4 and stuff, I think. So,
sweet.
What else? Are we almost done?
Lewis Cox. Why hasn't there been a TMNT Daredevil crossover yet?
Because Marvel's weird about playing ball with other companies, especially after they got bought out by Disney. That's my answer.
That's absolutely correct. Far be it for me to debate with you on that one.
Thanks. I think that's the answer.
Yeah.
And then TH1, talking about something from earlier. In Lego Incredibles, the Anchorman is a villain.
Oh, cool.
That's awesome. That's actually a great name, the Anchorman.
And that sounds like a thing, like an Incredibles thing,
Incredibles
right?
would do,
yeah.
Yeah, I haven't played that yet. I think we bought it, but I haven't put it in yet. My wife and I collect the Lego games, but we're so behind on them.
My son is a fiend for the Lego games. He just loves them, and he loves the Marvel Lego game the most. And he's like, "Daddy, can you play Mr. Fantastic?" I'm like, "Sure, bud. What am I doing here?" Like, yeah.
The first one is clunky, but what I played of 2 was really, really good. But they're gonna be hard pressed to beat the Lego DC Villains game. It's really cool, and you can customize and make your own Lego guy. And somebody a couple weeks ago made a Lego Captain Logan, and we showed it on the show, and that was fun.
Nice.
The Lego Harry Potter game is the only game I can get my wife to play because she's a huge Harry Potter fan, and she doesn't like playing games where you die. So she'll play that with me.
No, my wife plays the Lego game with my son, and she's like, "What am I supposed to do here? I don't understand."
Yeah, that's Sarah's jam. She loves those. Okay, is that it? I think that's it. Well, everybody, thanks so much for hanging out with us. Thanks for all the great, varied Super Chat questions. And sorry we didn't get to very much pre-written tonight, but you got 2 really long-winded guys on at the same time. So,
guys, thank you so much. Captain, I appreciate this. Guys, this has been amazing, and thank you.
Oh, thanks, man. Yeah, no, it was a lot of fun. We covered a lot of random ground. We talked about all kinds of different stuff, so it was really fun. Like, I know we spent a long time on different segments, but if you go back through this 2.5-hour behemoth, you'll see various things, all kinds of different things that we talked about. DJ, thanks for modding as always. Appreciate you, buddy. And
Thank you, man.
So next Tuesday night, we're going to be back with more Marvel Mania. And DJ is going to regale us with tales of being an extra on the set of Spider-Man Homecoming. So look forward to that. We're going to be watching the film, and I've done a commentary on that, so I'm going to let DJ do a lot of the talking. And so look forward to that. It'll be fun. Live as always. And then 2 weeks after that, I finally have to sit through Ragnarok again. And I'm sort of not looking forward to that, but a part of me is really curious to see what that's like on a second viewing, because I detested it so much I've never watched it again. And I know there's a whole lot of differing opinions on that, and it's very polarizing, and a lot of our audience likes that movie, and a lot of our audience doesn't like that movie. So, it'll be fun to watch that with both sides, and we'll see if we can be more civil than presidential candidates. It'll be great.
That's not a high bar to cross.
That's true.
I mean, we'll be civil because we agree on it. Like, I kind of hope we both detest it again.
That's true, but I just mean everybody. I just mean us talking to folks in the comments. Like, if you really love that movie and you decide to come and watch it with us, hopefully it will be a good time for all. I think that it will. Alexi, come back sometime, man. It's great to have you.
Absolutely, man. Anytime that you want me.
Absolutely, man. Well, thanks. So
thank you.
We're going to go ahead and call it a night. Bid you farewell. Lots more cool stuff coming here on Geekvolution over the coming days, including, I just remembered I should mention this too, tomorrow I'll be posting a review that Eric and I just did for the new animated Superman movie, Man of Tomorrow, which I'll go ahead and show my hand now for everybody still watching. Is spectacular, and one of the best things they've ever made, and yeah, it was a big shocker for me. So anyway, look forward to that. Lots more stuff here on the channel. I was Captain Logan. That was DJ Martinez and Alexi Vanderberg.
Thanks, guys.
Later, everybody.